Chapter 10:51. The whirlpool and the bathtub spun. Han Dong thought that he would go straight to the church's gate hidden in London. Who knew that things weren't that simple? As his body was slowly absorbed by the whirlpool, a strong sense of spatial compression acted on his body. It was different from normal spatial transmission. This time, it was like passing through a black hole channel. He felt that his organs were squeezed together, and he was supported by his torso. The spatial transmission lasted for half an hour. Just as Han Dong felt that his body had been compressed into strips of meat and was about to suffocate, a series of bubbles rose from the bottom of the bathtub. Cough, cough, cough. Violent coughs came from the same bathroom. Accompanied by a series of coughs, his body slowly returned to normal. Han Dong found that he was still sitting in the bathtub, instead of arriving at the church's gate as he had expected. However, everything around him had changed. The bathtub itself was in a spiral shape, and the clear water inside was constantly stirring. The bathroom also showed a strange scene. The spiral shower head, the mirror surface of the concave whirlpool structure, and the conical spiral structure of the bath products, everything was related to the whirlpool. Han Dong frowned and couldn't make a conclusion yet. He immediately left the bathroom and went to the guest room. The wallpaper of the guest room was densely packed with irregular spiral marks of different sizes. After staring at it for a while, he even felt that these marks were rotating at different speeds. He stepped to the window. The city of London in front of him stunned Han Dong. The city of London, which was almost the same as a human city, had completely changed, becoming a twisted city with a spiral theme. Could it be that the Church of the Maelstrom built a parallel space on the basis of the City of London? How could it be? The City of London is not an ordinary city. The city itself is tied to a king-level land deed. Could it be that the Mother of the Night was really bewitched and rebelled? With the land deed authority, a hidden parallel city was built on the opposite side of the City of London, where the Church of the Maelstrom secretly developed. But could the old king, who was a witness and even a part of the truth, really be bewitched? Not to mention that the mother was not an independent king. She was still a subordinate of the Chaos Walker. Doing such a betrayal of the world would definitely be punished by the Chaos Walker, right? It's too early to make a conclusion. Let's take a look first. Han Dong observed the strange attire of the pedestrians on the street and immediately brought out his traditional attire. He put on the familiar bird's beak mask, put on the holy vestment sewn with metal threads. Gray tentacles with spots floated behind his head, touching the walls, carpets, decorations, and so on in the room, absorbing environmental factors. Environment simulation. When the tentacles retracted back into his head, the presence that Han Dong exuded could completely blend in with the environment, turning him into a simple and undetectable trainee. Let's go out and take a look. When he opened the door, Han Dong was immediately stunned. A strange instructor was kneeling at the door. He was wearing a top-notch horn-shaped hat, which completely covered his head and shoulders. In the center of the cloth cap, a whirlpool was formed by the hemp rope. The reason why he was in a kneeling position was that his knees had been permanently removed. If one were to observe carefully, they would discover that there were coiled centipedes around his knees. As long as any new flesh grew, the centipedes would eat it. They were only allowed to kneel. At the same time, there were a large number of curved iron nails on his back, symbolizing their merits. He was a guide and was responsible for guiding the new instructors to the church to report. As long as the new instructors could successfully enter the church, they would receive a sinful nail from the priest, which would be nailed into their back. When the number of nails reached 100, their sins would be forgiven, and they could regain their standing posture and become official instructors. It seemed that all the new instructors needed to complete a series of trials to offset their sins. Becoming a guide was only one of the optional trials. This scene made Toga's heart itch. He wanted his back to be nailed full of such nails. Han Dong's attention stayed on the hands of the guide. In his hands was a long scroll of parchment, Sin and Sin Covenant. Although the followers sacrificed their own kind to show their loyalty, you were born as sinful fiends. You need to wash away the sins of your flesh with the ascetic training. In other words, the current Han Dong could not enter the church. He had to complete a ascetic training trial in the covenant to be recognized by the church and be an official instructor. According to the covenant, there were 5 types of trials to wash away sins. 1. Guide was the trial that the guide in front of him was undergoing. It was also the simplest and most intuitive way. 2. Performance required the trainee to perform a painful performance within the city of London and be recognized by more than 10 official instructors. 3. Excursion required the trainee to wear iron chains on his feet, tie his hands behind his back, and hang a heavy incense burner around his neck. He had to walk 3 laps around the outermost area of London. 4. Teaching materials became the physical teaching materials of the church's branch and allowed the church to use them for 3 days. 5. Contribution provided the church with clues about the impurities. These impurities referred to those who did not intend to join the Church of the Maelstrom but broke into this world. The 5 different trials had a time limit. If one did not complete the trial within the specified time or failed on the way, he would be labeled as a failure and become an object of the church until death. In this way, to further ensure the loyalty of the instructors? Not a bad method. After all, the fiends are extremely loyal to their former king. Only by breaking down their original loyalty and giving them absolutely standardized religious management can it be possible to change their beliefs. At this time, the guide kneeling in front of him said in a low voice, "Please choose a trial." "I choose." Han Dong originally wanted to choose the 5th trial. With the little magic eye, he should be able to efficiently search for the impurities without suffering any pain. But a voice in his body immediately changed Han Dong's mind. The 4th trial - teaching materials. This trial takes the shortest time, but the mortality rate is higher. Are you sure you want to choose? Yes. Please come with me. Can you wait for me for a moment? I'll come after I go to the toilet. Go. Please do not have any thoughts of escaping. Once you refuse the trial, you will immediately be purged by the church. Okay, I just need to go to the toilet. Han Dong returned to the toilet and immediately summoned Togu. A tentacle connected to Togu's bald head, achieving a shared disguise and making Togu look exactly like himself. "Togu, are you sure there's no problem?" Togu showed a very casual expression. "Master, you have never been to the monastery in hell. The so-called trials of suffering here are as simple as breathing for me. Then I'll leave it to you." Indeed, as Togu left with the guide, Han Dong also gained 3 days of freedom. Impurities? I knew there must be other fiends with similar goals as me. I'll try to find them. At the same time, I'll have a general understanding of the structure of this distorted parallel world. Chapter 1052. Integu took on the ascetic training trial. Han Dong was able to disguise himself as an idle person and walk freely on the street. Because of his vortex characteristics and his camouflage ability to blend in with the environment, Han Dong was the most inconspicuous existence no matter where he went. Even if someone looked at him, they would not stay on him for more than a second. After several hours of strolling around the city, Han Dong slowly accepted the spiral setting of the city. At the same time, he also discovered a few strange points. 1. In some dark corners, mainly in the alleys, there was a black vortex visible to the naked eye. Combined with what Han Dong had seen and heard in reality, he could roughly speculate that these black vortexes were the connection points to reality. From time to time, an official instructor would pass through the black vortex and go to London to recruit people. Without a pass, individuals couldn't pass through the black vortex. When he happened to pass by an alley, Han Dong happened to catch a glimpse of an official instructor who went to recruit people. The other party deliberately revealed a spiral arm that made Han Dong very uncomfortable. Han Dong didn't look too much to avoid arousing suspicion. 2. Although those who came here belonged to the selected instructor and belonged to the Church of the Maelstrom, there were many branches of the Church of the Maelstrom. They corresponded to different styles of churches on the outskirts of the city. There were even some churches that didn't have much to do with the Maelstrom. Han Dong secretly remembered this in his heart and would investigate it later. 3. The number of instructors was originally more than Han Dong had expected. In this distorted city, a basic economic system had even been formed. It was very inefficient to preach through booksellers. It was impossible to develop so many believers in a few months. Han Dong suspected that there were many ways to become a trainee instructor. Among them, in reality, the Church of the Evernight, which was scattered outside London and controlled the villages, might be related to the Church of the Maelstrom. They might have sent death row prisoners and villagers to undergo Maelstrom training. Once they reached the standard, they would send them over. The more Han Dong thought about it, the more suspicious his mother was of betrayal. A parallel world built with the city of London as a template, and a large number of preachers. Even if Mother Evernight were to interfere a little forcefully, she would not allow such a situation to occur. There are still too many suspicious points. I can only wait until I become an official instructor before I investigate further. Han Dong bypassed several streets and passed by an apartment-style building covered with thorns. A reaction came from his right arm, and an ordinary dog's head formed under his sleeve. "Nicholas, hurry up and take off your clothes. I think I smell something familiar." Han Dong lifted his sleeves slightly, revealing half of his dog nose. Asterisk sniff, sniff, asterisk count revealed a very confident expression. Although it's very faint, this smell can't be wrong. The impure ones you saw in the Sin Sect Covenant should be in this building. Do you want to meet them? To a certain extent, we are also considered as unclean, right? What is that smell? It's the smell of the black goat's offspring that we met in the dark forest not long ago. But this time the smell is purer. It's most likely an atavistic body. Which floor? The 7th floor of this building. Also, it's mixed with other smells. There should be another hybrid demon. A foreign hybrid demon that can infiltrate to this extent must not be simple. Okay, I'll go up and take a look. Han Dong smiled. He did not expect that the encounter in the dark forest, coupled with Count's sharp nose, would bring an unexpected harvest. Speaking of which, the building in front of him did not have many spiral features. Instead, it was themed with thorns. Thorns grew inside and outside the walls, and he could even hear the sound of thorns whipping flesh in some rooms. Speaking of which, the church that I just passed also had thorns as its main theme. One religion, many sects. Seeing that there was no one around, Han Dong strode into the apartment building. Stepping on the stairs, thorns and vines would whip at his back from time to time. Han Dong combined the atmosphere here and did not dodge. He allowed the thorns to whip his back, and soon smoothly reached the 5th floor. When he stepped on the last step, Han Dong suddenly felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. He could even hear the cries of a large number of babies coming from all around. In the blink of an eye, he actually saw a few babies covered in stinky mucus and with empty eyes crawling out of the swamp and crawling up their legs. Domain? Han Dong did not use crazy laughter to dispel this strange mental influence. Instead, he directly released his own domain. As grains of black sand flowed out, the swamp and the babies crawling out of the swamp were forcibly covered by Han Dong's domain. At the same time, dong dong dong, Han Dong stretched out his hand and knocked on the front door. Soon, the door opened with a gap the width of a head. What was revealed was neither terrifying goat hooves nor slippery tentacles. Instead, it was a woman with black sand covering her face. Only 2 black, gem-like eyes were exposed. At the same time, a strong fertility aura spread out. Just as Count said, this aura was even purer than the black goat's descendant in the dark forest. It even made Han Dong's cells react. Han Dong said in the alien demon language, "I came alone. I'm sure no one followed me." The woman did not answer. Whether Han Dong was alone or not, she already knew the answer in her heart. She took 2 steps back and signaled Han Dong to go in and talk. Just as Han Dong stepped into the room, an extremely oppressive black shadow attacked. Several tentacles fluttered in the air through isomerization, turned into twisted, sharp, terrifying claws covered with mysterious runes. It was extremely dangerous. The claws hung in front of Han Dong's head and firmly blocked him at the door. The one who attacked was not the black goat's descendant, but another person in the room. The figure was covered by a cloak. The arm that stretched out the claws appeared to be black gelatinous, and there seemed to be a hidden scale structure. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong even saw a pair of terrifying, twisted wings growing out of the man's back. I don't mean any harm. I just smelled something else, so I came to take a look. I'm also an outsider who came to investigate the vortex incident. In order to convince the two people in front of him, Han Dong activated the part of power that belonged to Count and let the smell of blood diffuse in the room. A magnetic male, alien demon voice came from under the hood. You are the servant of Alpine Blood Ancestor CHF. Your body seems to be mixed with other attributes. Although the claws were still hanging in front of Han Dong, the killing intent was obviously weakened. Han Dong explained, well, I'm very sensitive to smells. When I entered London before, I encountered a black goat's descendant outside the city. When I passed by downstairs, I smelled a similar smell, so I came to take a look. Such words also made the woman's expression turn ugly. She quickly wrapped the bedding on the bed around her body, trying to hide her uncontrollable fertility aura as much as possible. Chapter 1053. The Maelstrom incident only happened in the City of London. Therefore, those involved in the incident were all locals or the dark inhabitants of many kinds who believed in the Mother of the Night. The Church of the Maelstrom had only been established for a few months, and it was limited to the teacher development within the City of London. There was still a long way to go before it could spread to the outside world. The Maelstrom incident, the participant incident, fate's coveting of the world's sovereignty, and other incidents were all linked together. As a result, many of the old kings turned their attention to the City of London, which was absolutely sealed off from the outside world. They sent some subordinates with dark characteristics and stealth characteristics to the surrounding areas of the City of London to try to sneak into the city and find out the relevant reasons. But because the City of London had many barriers and special times, leaving only one city gate open and a large number of Blackwing agents hovering in the sky, a large number of foreign hybrid demons were excluded. But there were also a very small number of elites who could sneak into the City of London through camouflage, stealth, isomerization, or strange abilities. They could even enter the extremely secretive parallel world of the Maelstrom incident. These outsiders who sneaked in were also called impurities in the Church of the Maelstrom's Sin Church Covenant. They were targets that had to be eliminated. Currently, the two that Han Dong met by chance in the Thorn Apartments were entrusted by their respective old kings to successfully sneak into the outsiders. The tense atmosphere eased, and the killing intent was also retracted into the hybrid demon's cloak. The aura of the blood brew released by Han Dong was not fake. This was because this mantis demon, who could form terrifying claws through the isomerization of tentacles, had once been invited to the Scarlet Mountain. He had even personally witnessed and participated in the blood brew banquet. Although the blood ancestor who occupied the secret stone on the mountain had a lot of controversy in the world, this hybrid demon was a true king. Whoosh, the claws turned back into tentacles and returned to the hybrid demon's sleeve. It meant that Han Dong's identity was recognized. I still have a friend here. As he spoke, a toad pearl was spat out from Han Dong's mouth. Drip, the toad pearl fell to the ground, and the corresponding ground immediately turned into a pool. Meritus, whose skin was smooth and glossy, climbed out of the pool like a beauty coming out of the bath. Toad demon. It's actually hidden in the body of a blood descendant. The mantis demon was stunned by the scene in front of him. In his mind, the status of a toad demon was not lower than a blood descendant of the same rank. And, as the core of a toad demon, the pearl was both a treasure and the source of life of a toad demon. This kind of thing would not be casually handed over to someone else. Han Dong naturally used the identity of Count and explained his relationship with Mary. I'm a special kind of bloodline descendant. Even though I serve the blood ancestor, I also drink blood wine. However, the blood flowing in my body is of a higher level, so I'm not directly under the blood ancestor's control. I travel outside all year round and establish relationships with many factions. Mauritius is a good friend I met when I was traveling through Central Europe. This time, we came here because we were entrusted by the BUFO. As for the specific reason, it's hard to say. Those who are able to infiltrate this place naturally have some ability. Han Dong's words were not doubted. The most basic level of trust was barely achieved, but there was something strange. Mauritius's condition was rather strange. Logically speaking, as soon as Han Dong entered the door, he was forcefully threatened by the other party, and even revealed killing intent. According to Mauritius's arrogant personality, she would definitely carry out a series of verbal provocations and even directly fight with the other party. However, when she appeared, she stuck 1/3 of her body behind Han Dong. Her round eyes stared at the woman wrapped in the bedding the entire time. Part of the reason was the slight fear that originated from the heart. More importantly, there was a scene engraved in Mauritius's mind. It was the scene that she obtained through resonance as a mantis demon. In the scene, on the vast and boundless scorched earth, there stood a door-shaped stone tablet. The stone tablet was jointly created and recognized by many old kings. The surface was engraved with a tree, similar to the Gate of Truth. The branches were connected from top to bottom to represent the origin substance. "Are you okay?" Han Dong asked in return. She's the one who left her name on the ancestral stone tablet, the fourth origin substance, loving Tifereth. It was the first time Han Dong heard such a term. He looked curiously at the woman wrapped in the bedding. At this time, Count in his body seemed to have been stimulated by something and shouted crazily, "Origin substance." To actually encounter the fourth origin substance here, seize the opportunity. This is an existence that will definitely become a mythical entity in the future and even touch the throne. Han Dong's curiosity was immediately aroused. He looked natural on the outside, but he immediately asked Count about the relevant information in private. "Count, don't be too excited. Hurry up and tell me, what is the ancestral stone tablet, and what is the origin substance?" It seems to be a common concept engraved in the minds of mantis demons. If I show ignorance, it might affect the following conversation. The ancestral stone tablet comes from the mysterious king in the universe who is illusory and wandering in the void. He proposed it, and all the old kings acknowledged it. The stone tablet built by imitating the Gate of Truth was built. It is dedicated to promoting the growth of the atavism body and pushing us to reach the mythical realm. Every 10 years, an origin substance game between the atavism bodies is held. The 10 atavism bodies with the best performance in the game will receive the title of origin substance and leave their names on the stone tablet. Simply put, the mantis demons who can be crowned with the title of origin substance are the 10 strongest atavism bodies. The woman in front of us is the fourth origin substance. Regardless of strength, potential, or specificity, she is the best among the atavism bodies. Her purity is much higher than the average black goat's offspring, as expected of the fourth origin substance. Mantis demon ranking? Han Dong didn't make it too complicated. Simply put, it was a ranking that the old kings specially set up to promote the individual development of the mantis demons. Ranked fourth among all the atavism bodies? So powerful. From a normal perspective, there wasn't much special about the other party. The only special thing was that the aura released by this black goat could actually make a cellular life like Han Dong react. It seemed that she was indeed very powerful, since the trust relationship had been established. The mantis demon also took off his hood. In his anthropomorphic state, this mantis demon had long black hair and a delicate face with a hint of handsomeness. When he opened his mouth, one could see hook-like teeth embedded in the walls of his mouth. Together with his suck-like tongue, he could easily cut open the target's skull and suck the brain. Kaditha's terror hunter. Mauritius immediately recognized the mantis demon species that the little brother corresponded to. She also showed an ugly expression, as if she had met her natural enemy. Chapter 1054. Inside the apartment. Han Dong chose to sit in the corner, while Mauritius leaned on Han Dong's side in a toad squatting posture. As the fourth origin essence, the black goat's descendant sat in the middle of the bed with a blanket wrapped around her body due to her uncontrollable aura. Even in her humanoid state, her feet still retained the characteristics of a goat's hooves, and its function was unknown. The male hybrid demon, who was the terror hunter, stood beside the bed the whole time, looking like a mating partner and a normal friend. After a brief introduction, Kieran learned the black goat's descendant's name was Sally Lovehooves, and this terror hunter from Kaditha's Rift was Campbell Terrorwings. During the conversation, Han Dong quickly asked Count about the ancestral stone tablet and the 10 origin essences. This concept interested Han Dong very much. The 10 origin essences were arranged from front to back. First origin essence, Crown Kether. Second origin essence, Wisdom, Chakma. Third origin essence, Understanding, Bina. Fourth origin essence, Compassion, Chesid. Fifth origin essence, Reverence, Gebura. Sixth origin essence, Beauty, Tifereth. Seventh origin essence, Victory, Netza. Eighth origin essence, Glory, Had. Ninth origin essence, Foundation, Yesod. 10th origin essence, Kingdom, Maketh. The above corresponded to the ancestral body that was directly recognized by the old kings. Each of them was an absolute elite among the hybrid demons, and they all had the potential to reach the mythical realm. Some of them even showed the potential of becoming a king. Han Dong also wanted to have a deeper understanding of the so-called origin essence game. The conversation in the guest room of the apartment continued. Sally and Campbell followed the orders of the old kings and went to London. As for how the two met and why they came together, they didn't talk about it, and the real purpose of sneaking into London seemed to be hidden. It wasn't just to investigate the Church of the Maelstrom. When talking about the sneaking method, Han Dong's words caused a conflict again. The terrifying hook appeared again, and Campbell asked with a vigilant face, "What? Did you enter through the ritual of the Maelstrom Church? Then wouldn't your crystal core have already been assimilated?" Han Dong explained patiently, "That's right. No, because of some of my characteristics, this substance is unable to affect my core. Don't worry, I'm not a spy. Otherwise, you would have been arrested long ago. Didn't you come here by studying the Book of Initiation Rites?" Campbell was not at ease at all and revealed a part of his original form. A pair of terrifying wings spread out from under his cloak and sealed off the entire room. It was different from the conventional concept of wings. A pair of terrifying wings grew close to the wall, even reflecting the indescribable faces of monsters. Seeing this scene, Han Dong was not afraid. Instead, he smiled and sighed so strong. At this moment, Sally, who was wrapped in the blankets, spoke for the first time. An extremely seductive and magnetic voice rang out from under the black veil. "Camber, he's not lying. He shouldn't be an orthodox hybrid demon, but rather a hybrid of humans and hybrid demons. Furthermore, the human component is more prominent. His development system seems to have come from the Destiny realm and not our hybrid demon system. Because of this, he isn't affected by the vortex." "Is that so? I'm just worried." Campbell immediately cowered and quickly retracted his terrifying wings. Han Dong was also shocked. He felt his hair stand on end because of this sentence. Campbell actually saw through his identity at a glance. Due to Sally's interruption, Campbell's tone became calm. He simply explained their infiltration method. "We captured an official instructor through Miss Sally's seduction method and led us into this parallel world. Not long ago, we have already obtained the identity of a branch instructor of the Thorns Ascetic Order through special means. This apartment was also allocated by the Ascetic Order." The relevant introductions were almost done. Han Dong went straight to the point and threw out 3 words. "Cooperate?" When Han Dong asked this question, the atmosphere in the room became strange. The blanket that was wrapped in Sally suddenly appeared in front of Han Dong and instantly enveloped him. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong was already standing in a strange swamp. This place was filled with feminized trees. Viscous liquid that symbolized fertility constantly flowed out from the private areas of these trees, forming this swamp. At the bottom of the swamp were countless babies. The sensation of stepping on the babies' backs was the sensation of stepping on their feet. Han Dong suddenly turned around. Sally was already standing behind him. Her black goat hooves stepping on the water were abnormally conspicuous. A physical domain. Could it be that you did it on purpose from the beginning? You deliberately leaked a trace of your aura when we passed by the apartment to lure us in. You pretended that you couldn't control your aura and used the blanket to conceal it. In fact, you relied on the blanket to secretly nurture a domain so that you could drag me in. Under the black veil, there was a rare smile. A heart-shaped tongue could vaguely be seen wriggling in the darkness of her mouth. You are indeed very smart. It's no wonder that you can infiltrate this parallel world through official channels. Immediately after, an arm was placed on Han Dong's shoulder. Sally deliberately moved closer to his face and continued speaking. You're also very special. Since we met, I have used 3 charms on you, but the effect was very minimal. Han Dong wasn't nervous at all. He asked in return, could it be that you used charms on Campbell? No. Campbell is still very powerful. He can sense and resist my charms to a certain extent. He's just following me. Moreover, some of his abilities can make up for my shortcomings. After all, this matter involves the fundamental interests of several of our prime essence. It's good to have an additional helper. Han Dong was suddenly shocked. There are other prime essences ? Sally nodded. Apart from me, there are at least 3 prime essences who came to London under the arrangements of their respective kings. With their abilities, they will definitely be able to infiltrate. With this in mind, I'm also willing to cooperate. However, before we cooperate, I have to understand what you are. Blood Descendant is just your disguise. I have observed you for a long time and can barely read your human attributes. However, your head has always been covered by a thick fog. Han Dong revealed a maniacal smile and said without backing down, this involves personal privacy. If I answer, can I ask Miss Sally to answer one of my doubts? If not, then we won't cooperate. I will do it alone. What do you want to know? What is the ultimate purpose of you and the other prime essences taking a huge risk to infiltrate London? Unexpectedly, Miss Sally had no intention of hiding anything. She didn't even wait for Han Dong to reveal his nature and directly gave the answer. God's miracle. Aren't you here for this? What appeared in London is a physical miracle. It is of great help to us construct myths. Chapter 1055. Miracle? What miracle? Han Dong had never heard of any miracle. He came to London only because the expeditionary force's ultimate goal was here. Han Dong wanted to try to establish a certain status in London through his unique identity in advance. Maybe it could play a key role in the negotiations between the expeditionary force and London. When Han Dong asked this question, he was stunned. Sally, who was wearing a black veil, couldn't understand Han Dong for a moment. In her mind, the ultimate goal of the hybrid demons who sneaked into London should be the same. Sally tilted her head to the side. The only thing missing was a question mark hanging above her head. You don't even know about the miracle. Then what are you doing here? I just received the order from the guy above me to go deep into London to investigate the whirlpool incident. Just answer it together with my identity. Han Dong didn't hide it. Since there were so many big shots here, and everyone was a special elite sent by the old king, revealing part of his identity would be beneficial for cooperation and equal negotiation. As Han Dong raised his right arm and revealed the yellow seal on the back of his hand, the female trees in the swamp began to twist happily, and the liquid flowing from a certain part of the trunk also increased in volume. Only Sally seemed very reserved. Only a trace of surprise flashed in her black, gem-like eyes. Yellow seal. So you serve him. No wonder your main composition is human. I once saw the yellow robe at the ancestral stone tablet. It gave people a very strange feeling. Didn't the yellow robe tell you about this? No. For a moment, Sally fell into deep thought. Finally, there was a burst of brilliance in her eyes. She believed Han Dong's words, and the basic cooperation was reached at this moment. Let's go out and talk. Let your partner hear it too. In the blink of an eye, Han Dong had returned to the inn. Nothing seemed to have happened between the two. Sally was still wrapped in the quilt. Campbell and Meritus had no idea that the two had just had a private chat for a while. Han Dong thought, this girl's domain can touch the domain of time, as expected of the fourth prime essence. I agreed to cooperate with you, and can also share the information I currently have. However, I will be in charge of the overall operation. Sure, Han Dong agreed. It was not a problem for this powerful fourth origin substance to be in charge of the overall situation. He only needed to do some small things. Since they had reached an agreement, Han Dong's identity had also been recognized. Black Goat Sally no longer pretended to be weak. She lifted the blanket and walked to the window that was full of thorns. She began to tell Han Dong the truth about the vortex. About half a year ago, the city of London, which is directly under the command of the old king's mother, Anjin, welcomed the first batch of participants since the reopening of fate. Accordingly, the corresponding law of fate descended upon the city of London. All life forms in the city of London must play a game with the participants according to the rules. As the biological mother of the king, she was restricted by the rules and could not directly or indirectly affect the progress of the game. The existence of mythical bodies was also restricted by various levels. The fate event could lead to the worst outcome, allowing these participants to become the lords of London, and fate would forcefully tamper with the ownership of the title deed. Once the title deed, which is a physical representation of the power of the world, is taken away by outsiders, our world would be weakened. The title deed is a representation of the power of the world. Han Dong learned a new concept. In fact, Han Dong had come into contact with the power of the world before and had a general understanding of what it was. For example, during the Prometheus incident, the entire dry town had descended to assist Han Dong in obtaining the world node. The mayor only had one condition, and that was to ask for a portion of the power of the world to be used for the construction of Dry Town. Different worlds had a fundamental difference in size, and the power of the world was the key to this difference. The title deed could split out a territory with exclusive sovereignty on the level of the rules. It was a physical representation of the power of the world. From a side, only a high-level world could represent the power of the world in the form of a title deed and distribute it to different kings for unified management. Black Goat Sally continued talking about the past in London. However, the worst outcome did not happen. A month later, this group of participants fell into a trap set up by the Church of Evernight due to a major mistake. All of them died, and the worst outcome did not happen. At this point, the laws of fate were completely removed, and London returned to normal. These dead participants were life forms from a foreign world, and they had extremely high research value. The chief deacon of the Church of Evernight, the right arm of his mother, mythical body Father Lessos, hoped that the church could completely take over the research of the corpses. He wanted to use the characteristics of the participants' corpses to try and cultivate some special mantis demons. At the same time, he also requested his mother to seal off London so that the research could be carried out in complete secrecy. However, dozens of days passed. The Church of Evernight, which had spent a lot of manpower and resources, made no progress at all. They could not extract the effective genes of the participants, nor could they carry out homogenization. In a fit of anger, Father Lessos threw a corpse into the death row dungeon of the church's headquarters. It was this unintentional act that led to the descent of a miracle. The death row prisoners, who had not eaten for days or even weeks, and whose bodies were filled with all kinds of negative emotions, fought each other for the right to eat the corpse. In the end, only one person survived, bearing everyone's sins. When the corpse of the participant was completely eaten, a miracle descended. A strong, ownerless divinity descended on the death row prisoner. As he was only a newborn mantis demon, he had never touched the gate of truth, so he could not bear such divinity, let alone use this divinity to construct a myth. Therefore, this powerful and unknown divinity instantly wiped out the death row prisoner's consciousness. It caused his soul to dissipate and his body to turn into a twisted stone statue. It stood in the depths of the dungeon of the church's headquarters. The ownerless divinity was temporarily stored in the death row prisoner's crystal core, waiting for a qualified life form to come and accept it. Father Lesos immediately went to the dungeon to personally check the situation of the miracle. As a result, he found that the distorted divinity that descended on the death row prisoner, whether it was quality or potential, was higher than his own divinity, and even higher than that of his mother, who was the old lower king. Immediately, Father Lysos requested that the news of the miracle be sealed within the city. With the miracle as the beginning, he created the Church of the Maelstrom. On the surface, it was to cultivate a believer who could perfectly accept this unknown divinity and strengthen the strength of the city of London. My mother also attached great importance to this matter and agreed to Father Leso's request. She used the king's land deed to open up the parallel space we were in now for the Church of the Maelstrom, intending to digest this miracle internally. However, with the establishment of the Church of the Maelstrom, strange things happened one after another, and a large number of innocent residents died. This divinity from another world seemed to be able to change the essence of the mantis demons. The entire city of London gradually went out of control, and Father Lesos became independent, but his mother suddenly disappeared. Paper can't wrap fire. The relevant information was leaked about a month ago, and the old king's attention was naturally focused. But they did not forcefully suppress the city of London. Instead, they regarded it as a trial field. They sent their mantis demons to the city of London to conduct a miracle trial. Campbell, I, and the other atavistic demons who sneaked in also came because of the miracle. If we're lucky, one of us may be here to construct a myth. Chapter 1056. Blackout Sally's detailed explanation allowed Han Dong to easily understand the ins and outs of the whole matter. But then a new question arose. I have a rather ignorant question. Does the advancement of the atavistic body require the help of such a miracle? Sally answered patiently. As I said just now, the vortex miracle that descended in London corresponds to a divinity of unknown origin and without a master. The divinity itself is of very high quality and has been recognized by many old kings. Using the divinity without a master as a template will not affect us, and it can also help us directly step into the next realm. This ensures that we will not lose ourselves in the process of creating myths and be swallowed by the abyss. If we do not use this divinity, we will have to trigger the miracle ourselves. Whether it is the difficulty or the risk, it is very high. Oh, although Sally's explanation was very convincing, Han Dong still felt that it was not very good. Even if the divinity without a master was of high quality, as long as it was not one's own, there might be a limit and it could not be truly perfect. Let's wait until we see the vortex miracle before making a conclusion. Han Dong took the opportunity to continue asking. When I first came to the parallel world, I saw many churches of different styles along the way, corresponding to various types of churches. Some of the churches even have a style that has nothing to do with the vortex. For example, this area is dominated by thorns. What is going on? Father Lysos is very ambitious. According to the information we have so far, he is also trying to use the bodies of other participants to trigger another miracle. There are a total of 4 participants who came to London. Their attributes were whirlpool, thorns, silence, and heavy sword. Therefore, with the vortex as the leader, they also developed the Thorns Ascetic Order, the Silent Brethren Order, and the Heavy Sword Brotherhood. These factions built their own main churches in the periphery and hid the bodies of the corresponding participants for worship and research. Because of the independence of the miracle, the teachers of the branches have nothing to do with the vortex. Most of the ordinary teachers are prisoners on death row sent in from the outside world, or some dark dwellers with strong will. It is because we have nothing to do with the vortex that Compar and I can become teachers of the thorns. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to infiltrate. Have any miracles descended in these branches so far? No, but there's been some progress. What do you mean by progress? For example, some of the instructors in the Bramble ascetic order that we're in now have thorny hair or thorny tattoos after eating the thorns on the bodies of the participants. The ability system had also changed. It was a thorny attack that could inflict pain, and it could also reflect true damage when receiving damage. Even if there was no miracle, such a performance was worthy of the church's attention. If every corpse can attract a miracle, from the simplest point of view, it will bring 4 mythical entities to the City of London. This is enough to bring the City of London close to the territory ruled by the old middle-level king. What? The ability system of a derivative that uses corpses can change? Han Dong didn't care about what would happen to London. He was more concerned about the matter at hand. He rubbed his chin and asked in a low voice, "What's the matter? Is it possible that the 4 participants came to London with multiple objectives? Or perhaps they came here with the intention of dying?" When it came to this question, Black Goat Sally's expression didn't change. She reached out to push aside the thorns outside the window and looked at the city streets. It's possible, but it's not a big problem. Since the old kings, and even the omniscient and omnipotent existence, have agreed to use London as our trial ground, we just need to do our own thing. If the miracle that we witness is not friendly to us, we can choose to hand it over. We can also receive generous gifts from the kings. Han Dong nodded. All right, if we really succeed, how do we distribute the divinity stored in the crystal core? This question involved personal interests. Sally turned her black crystal-like eyes and stared at Han Dong. It's very simple. Divinity is unique. If we really succeed, the divinity storage will be within our reach. Everyone will fight for the treasure based on their own abilities. There won't be any cooperative relationship. Upon hearing this, Meritus quickly tugged at the corner of Han Dong's shirt. Her moist voice sounded in his mind. Don't agree to it. We'll be working for nothing. If we rely on our own abilities, we won't be able to fight for the divinity at all. We can't deal with the 4th prime substance alone, let alone a terrifying hunter from another galaxy. Meritus had just expressed her thoughts. Han Dong nodded and agreed to Sally's suggestion. All right, we'll rely on our own abilities when the time comes. When Sally saw this, a hint of surprise flashed through her eyes. Then, she revealed a rather seductive smile under her veil. Meritus was so anxious that she was sweating all over. She suspected that Han Dong had been bewitched by the other party. Unexpectedly, Han Dong gently placed a hand on Mary's shoulder and said in a gentle voice, "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. My mind won't be so easily bewitched by the other party. Don't worry." At this moment, Sally, who was leaning against the window, continued, "If we want to achieve so-called success, we still have a long way to go. At this stage, Father Lessos, who is stationed at the church's headquarters, is an existence that we can't fight against. We can only start by gathering information slowly and find the best way to sneak into the dungeon. If we fight head-on, it's basically a dead end. How do you plan to gather information? We'll split up. Compar and I will still be active in the Bramble ascetic order. While trying to get information from the branch, we'll also try to get a certain position in the church. Since you've been infected with the Vortex attribute through the rite of initiation and entered as a trainee instructor, you can continue to use this identity. If you can enter the church's headquarters, that would be best. The stronghold will be set up in the apartment. Every once in a while, we'll exchange information. By the way, when will you become an official instructor? I'm still in the assessment period. About 3 days later, don't you need to take the assessment yourself? I used some disguise methods to let a true clone take the assessment on my behalf. Considering that Han Dong was related to the mysterious yellow-robed man, Sally did not suspect anything. That means you'll be completely free for the next 3 days, right? Yes. Coincidentally, I have a troublesome matter here that I need to recruit people to deal with together. Why don't you come with me? Chapter 1057. In the corner of the universe. On the surface of a planet without any signs of life. On the barren land swept by a superstorm, there stood a low building that was theoretically impossible to exist. It was completely unaffected by the environment. Looking at it from different perspectives, the building would appear in different forms. It could be an ancient castle, a dirty pool of blood, the abdominal cavity of a living creature, or the concave surface of starlight. Now, let's examine it from a human brain structure. The building corresponded to a bar in the western United States. Cheerful sounds were constantly coming from inside, as if a game was being played. There was only a large wooden round table in the hall. A total of 11 guests sat around. Whether it was makeup, dress, speech, behavior, or characteristics, they were all very different. They seemed to be of the same species, but there were huge differences. Briefly describing the appearance of a few of them, all from a human perspective, a person sitting at the northeast corner of the round table was stepping on a pair of shoes overflowing with seawater, and the other end was barefoot on the ground. It was similar to the clothes of a pirate captain, with long wet hair hanging down to his shoulders. As if soaked in the deep sea for years, wrinkles covered his face like gullies, and his eyes were shining with psychedelic starry colors, as if he could enter the dreamland that was both real and illusory. No matter what he did, he was half a beat slower than the other people around him. There was also a person wearing a delicate British vest. His whole body was gray, and his movements showed an aristocratic temperament. When this person was observed from different directions, his facial features would always be missing. The mouth couldn't be seen from the side above, the left eye couldn't be seen from the right, and the nose couldn't be seen from the side below. The other guests also had their own characteristics and were easy to distinguish. A man in a suit sat at the first seat of the large round table facing the bar. He was also the person in charge of the building. The bartender, from human perspective, was also the leader who released the urgent message and led some of the guests here for the gathering. The bartender had a strange, square face, and his deep eyes were like the most distant cluster of stars. This group of people gathered together and played a gambling game with the theme of a meeting. Each guest held at least 5 chips with the corresponding emblem in their hands. On the surface of the round table, a model of the city of London was perfectly scaled. The details of the city walls, buildings, streets, and the Thames River were all restored. Some kind of giant life could even be seen in the city walls. In the center of the round table, there was a stable, movable support that carried the second table. On the second table was a parallel world, the City of London. It was an independent space created using a king-level land deed to allow the Church of the Maelstrom to develop in secret. Through a method similar to a chessboard, the two cities were presented. Except for the buildings, there were also a series of individual models that represented the hybrid demons that were under the command of different old kings. They were mainly atavistic demons and were placed in different areas of the round table. Some of the models were still located outside the City of London on the main chessboard, indicating that they had not yet entered the city. They were wandering in the dark forest, in the basin outside the city, or in the villages. Some models had already entered the city, but they had yet to find a way to infiltrate the parallel space. There were also a small number of models that were located in parallel worlds. These included models that represented the Fourth Origin, Sally, the Terror Hunter, Campbell, the Spotted Toad, Meritus, and Hondong. The meeting was divided into 2 parts. 1. London gambling. With the bartender as the banker, the parameters of the universe were combined to set reasonable odds for different models, hybrid demons. The guests could use the chips in their hands, corresponding to the land deed, to bet on the models. 2. An official meeting for the Destiny space. The game would end after a certain hybrid demon obtained the corresponding ownerless divinity of the Maelstrom miracle. A discussion that touched on the rules would be carried out according to the destiny events that happened in the City of London. Of course, this group of people was more inclined to the first item of the meeting. It had been a long time since everyone got together to play. Moreover, this gamble involved several little guys who could leave their names on the ancestral tablet. The event itself also involved divinity from other worlds, as well as foreign substances that could threaten the essence of the hybrid demons. The reason why the old kings tried their best not to interfere with the overall events that happened in the City of London, was because they wanted to keep more variables. The more variables there were, the more interesting the game would be, and their bets would be more interesting. The game began. A middle-aged man with fog all over his body and a gloomy face like a corpse placed his bet first. With a raise of his hand, a fog that could cover the light and induce the fall of all things was emitted. This fog seemed to be the nameless fog that shrouded the surface of the earth and led the world into the eternal night era. If you want to play, let's play more exciting. I'll go straight to the poker. I'll bet on the first primordial cultivated by the boss. This guy's performance in the last primordial competition was too amazing. Among these little guys, he should be the only one who can fight against a mythical body head-on. Although this kid has the crazy blood of the boss, he has an unusual calmness. He is still waiting for the opportunity outside the giant city wall. I guess when the time is right, he will choose to attack forcefully to speed up the pace of the game and make it interesting. The chips printed with the fog icon were all pushed to the side of a model with long curly hair and a twisted posture. Just as this person said, the model was still outside the city wall, waiting for a certain opportunity. The whole body exuded a crazy aura. Although the odds were only 1-4, many guests would still bet part of their chips, or even all of their chips, on this model. After a while, it was a lady's turn. She was wearing an extremely seductive and sexy black dress. A forest of rotting sheep seemed to be hidden in the hem of the dress. Her hair, which looked like branches and vines, fell on her shoulders. There was a goat's hoof imprinted on her unusually beautiful face. Even though this lady was like a carrier of temptation, the guests at the scene had no intention of doing so. Or rather, they didn't dare to have any relevant thoughts. 9 chips, bet on Sally and 1 on this little guy. The chips that symbolized a high-grade land deed were casually thrown out. 9 goat's hoof chips fell next to the model of Sally with goat's hoof. The odds displayed were 1-2-7. The last chip fell on a model next to Sally. It was just an ordinary model without the mark of the atavistic body. The odds given by the bartender were 1-19. As this chip fell on this ordinary model, the bartender revealed a rare smile. Immediately after, it was the turn of the old man in a captain's outfit whose boots were constantly overflowing with seawater. Without saying anything, he directly divided the chips with the octopus imprinted on them in half. Half was given to a powerful subordinate under him, and the other half was given to the ordinary model chosen by the lady in front of him. Just when everyone was surprised and thought that this old man had too many land deeds in his hands and wanted to give them away for free, the gray man in a small vest waved his hand and bet all the chips with the faceless head on this ordinary model. He even showed a happy expression and whistled cheerfully. The first fog man who bet was surprised. He seemed to be very familiar with the gray man and asked curiously, "What's this little guy? Why don't you give some chips to the boss's descendants? It's just a game. Since it's rare for everyone to get together, let's play more exciting. It's just a few land deeds. Anyway, trouble is coming soon. Giving out a few land deeds can reduce my personal pressure. Hint, the above is what you see with normal human vision. If you change your brain waves, you may see different scenes." Chapter 1058. The camera slowly zoomed in from the guests of different shapes to the game roundtable, and then to the parallel chessboard. Change scene. In the parallel space of London, in the faculty apartment building under the jurisdiction of the Thorn Ascetic Order. Sally, who had a pair of black goat hooves, looked at Han Dong, who had reached a cooperation agreement in private. Even if the aura of this young man had yet to touch the door of truth, but to be able to resist her charm 3 times in a row and be directly demolished by Yellow Robe, he was definitely not a simple character. He might even be hiding something that even she couldn't see. Since you have 3 days of free time, do us a favor. Your strength is far more powerful than ours. Do you still need help? Sally explained simply. It's not a matter of strength, but a matter of manpower. We need to get rid of a priest in the Thorn Ascetic Order without leaving any clues and without being suspected at all. Once we get rid of him, We can use the contributions we accumulated in the church over the past 2 months to directly replace him. Because there is no position available now, we have to find a way to vacate a position. The authority of a priest allows us to investigate more things, and it's more convenient for us to act. Isn't it too hasty? You should be able to be promoted after a while, right? After all, Han Dong had just arrived. As an outsider and an impure person designated by the church, it was too risky to take the risk of killing a priest. Now that the position of priest is full, we can only wait for an additional branch to be established. I don't know how long it will take. We have been delayed for a long time. If we wait any longer, we will lose all the advantages in our hands. You have to know that the London incident attracted the attention of many old kings. This kind of unknown divinity that can target the hybrid demons themselves can not only allow their subordinates to have a mythical body, but also hold an important bargaining chip. Dozens or even hundreds of atavistic bodies, some of which don't even belong to our planet. Now, they have all come to the periphery of London under the orders of their respective old kings. The hybrid demons who could be appointed by the kings are not simple, especially that madman. We must touch the depths of the church before he does anything. Otherwise, according to this madman's progress, he will catch up with all of us in a short time. He might even become our enemy and completely devour us with madness. If it wasn't for your mother's special order, I would have quit at the first moment I knew that this lunatic was here. When the word lunatic was mentioned, even the fierce-looking Campbell revealed an ugly expression. Madman? Could it be? Meritus also heard about it, and immediately revealed a surprised expression. In the hybrid demon world, the word madman was a derogatory term. Those who could be called madmen were a group of abnormal characters. Count, who is this lunatic they're talking about? At this moment, even the usually arrogant Count was stunned for a moment. Then, with a very serious tone, he said, according to them, there are multiple or even double Old Wangdu who participated in the London game, and each of them sent one or more atavistic bodies as chess pieces. As for the mythical bodies, they should not be involved. There is only one person who could make the Black Mountain Goat afraid of the atavistic body and the title of madman. Don't keep me in suspense. Hurry up and say it. It should be the first place of the previous Origin Essence game. The most primitive blood of madness flows in his body. It's extremely rare and belongs directly to that existence's hybrid demon. The symbol of the first Origin Essence of the crown, Christopher J. Green, nicknamed Mad Demon. Rumor has it that he can fight against mythical bodies. Not only does he rely on the Mad Demon bloodline in his body, but more on his own strength. Similarly, because of the Mad Demon bloodline in his body, he does things without logic. If he also participates in this London game, he definitely won't do things according to the rules. He won't sneak in like us. It's very likely that he will choose to forcefully seize the unknown divinity. The first Origin Essence, that is to say the strongest atavistic body chosen by the old kings, is stronger than the Black Mountain Goat? It's indeed very troublesome. At this stage, I'm just a mature body among the hybrid demons. When he was privately chatting with the Black Mountain Goat, Han Dong could feel a lot of pressure. This girl could also form a completely independent and isolated domain for a short period of time, which had exceeded Han Dong's understanding of the atavistic body. At present, he had not adapted to it, and now there was a stronger one. The Earl looked a little panicked. If this guy really appears, don't get into a conflict with him because of interests. Our goal isn't God's miracle. Anyway, if we get entangled by this lunatic, we might be dragged into the abyss of madness. By then, death will become the most luxurious thing. Don't worry, I'm just a bystander. What do we need to do to get rid of the priest? Han Dong did not ask for the specific plan. He believed that this girl, as the fourth Origin Essence, could give a perfect plan. Only bait and mind control are needed. I have already planted the seed of charm. I only need to use words to lure this priest out of his residence. But the difficulty is that he must be led to a secret place. Along the way, there may be fluctuations in his thoughts. To ensure stability, I hope that Miss Mary can be used as bait and cooperate with me to lure him. You and I are different types of females. This priest is a lecher and will definitely take the bait. Okay. Meritus could only nod slightly. Black Goat Sally turned to Han Dong and revealed an evil smile. As for you, you should be very good at mind control, right? Obviously, a young man who could not be affected by the charm must have a talent in mind control. Moreover, Han Dong's head was covered with a layer of fog. Even with the help of a treasure, she could not see through it. It's okay. Wait until Miss Mary and I lure the target to location. As the main hypnotist, I will lead the priest into a fake world full of female love. His mind will be in a state of excitement and will greatly weaken his consciousness defense. At that time, you need to use your mind to guide him to suicide. The best way is to construct an unwavering suicidal thought in his consciousness. Can you do it? If I can really completely weaken his consciousness defense, I should be able to do it. Han Dong's vague answer was absolutely not allowed for such an important matter. But Miss Sally in front of him smiled and decided on the plan. When do we leave? Since you just came here, you should rest for the night and leave tomorrow night. You should not have a place to stay, so you can sleep here for the time being. Just lend us the bathroom. Mary likes places with a lot of water. I am also very comfortable. Chapter 10:59. The terrifying hunter from the outer galaxy, Campbell, was unhappy when he heard that the two of them would stay here and temporarily use his and Sally's time. However, when Han Dong proposed to rest in the bathroom, Campbell nodded slightly, thinking that the young man was more self-aware. However, although it was a two-person world, Campbell, who lived in the same room, didn't have the right to go to bed at all. Even when Black Goat Sally was resting, he needed to pay full attention to the situation around the apartment. Once there was any suspicious situation that he didn't report, he would be despised by Sally. If he wanted to rest, he had to get Sally's permission. Also, he could only hang on the ceiling and couldn't go to bed. Even so, Campbell still enjoyed this kind of alone time. The bathroom wasn't spacious, and some areas were even covered with thorns. However, as long as the bathtub could fit two people, it was fine. In order to avoid some irresistible force, Han Dong still asked Mary not to take off her clothes and immersed herself in the bathtub. Perhaps because the two powerful atavistic physiques were outside, Mary didn't have that kind of nature. Since the cooperation had been decided, there was nothing to say. The tender long legs were placed on Han Dong's body, and Meritus leaned on the bathtub and fell asleep. Mary's mental state seems to be a bit weak today. Just when Han Dong wanted to get up and check on her, an aura that could arouse Han Dong's desire suddenly filled the entire bathroom. A black goat hoof stepped on a gap in the middle of the bathtub and slowly descended. As a result, the three of them were squeezed in the narrow bathtub. In the past, Meritus would inevitably be awakened in such a situation. But this time, she slept very deeply and even had a strange dream of love. Her body twisted back and forth, and a large amount of sticky water droplets overflowed from the pores of her skin. The one who descended between the two of them was the black goat, Sally. Due to the narrow space in the bathtub, Sally's body was almost stuck to Han Dong, and the distance between their lips was very close. You. The answer just now was very reluctant. You don't seem to be confident, or are you not capable enough? This time, we can't make the slightest mistake in luring the priest to suicide. Han Dong moved back as much as he could and answered awkwardly. Because I've never seen the priest, I don't know what kind of person he is, and I don't know where our plan will be carried out. Naturally, I won't give a definite answer so easily. Haha. In order to ensure that the plan is foolproof, let me test you in advance. Black Goat Sally seemed to be very interested in this young man, who was not affected by her charms at all. When she found out that Han Dong was wearing a yellow robe, her interest instantly multiplied. How? Han Dong had an indescribable feeling of strangeness. He quickly reached out and covered his chest, making a defensive posture. Since this toad demon is so trusting and loyal to you, you must have a deep connection with the toad god. You should have the qualifications to go to the Dreamlands, right? Yes, but I don't know if I can make it in this environment. The Dreamlands is a world created by many old kings who have touched the abyss of dreams, combining many land deeds and the rules of the world. It is attached to our world, but it exists independently. As long as you are recognized by the Dreamlands, no matter where you are in the world, you can send your consciousness there through dreams. It is also the last line of defense and refuge set up by the old kings. Let's go. We will test your ability. In the bathtub, due to the small space, Black Goat's hooves were straddling both sides of Han Dong's body. This kind of close contact wasn't scary. What was scary was that the Black Mountain Goat Girl's aura was able to make Han Dong react. He was forced to sleep. In the blink of an eye, using sleep as a channel, his consciousness landed in a strange forest. The mushrooms here were piled up together in the form of a tall tower. The trees here shone with a metallic luster. The branches were spread out in a regular hexagonal pattern. Sally's two hands were on Han Dong's shoulders. She tilted her head and whispered in his ear, "I will test it on myself. I will lower my consciousness to a small enough level and simulate the mental state of the priestess in the plan. You can directly inject suicidal thoughts into my mind and see what the effect is. Don't disappoint me, or else our cooperation will be meaningless." "Okay, I will give it a try. When will it start?" "You can start now." Just as Sally finished this sentence, she heard a faint snicker. In the blink of an eye, her neck was hanging on a branch through a vine, and a sense of suffocation filled her brain. "What's going on?" Sally quickly tore off the vine on her neck and stared at the young man not far away with a strange and fearful gaze. Although she had almost eliminated her consciousness, she did not feel anything. However, it was not to the extent that she could not feel anything. The entire suicide process was not stored in her memory at all. "How did you do that?" Han Dong giggled. "Miss Sally, you have almost emptied your consciousness. It is very easy to inject suicidal thoughts. If the corresponding priestess in the plan is also in this state, I can guarantee that nothing will go wrong. Do a few more times." She said to do it a few more times, but this time, Black Goat Sally adjusted her consciousness slightly, wanted to understand how Han Dong did it. But as a burst of crazy laughter sounded in her head, the next second, she was still hanging on the branch in a hanging state. Again, this time, Sally did not weaken her consciousness at all. Waves of distorted, crazy, whirlpool-like consciousness attacked her brain's defense line. Han Dong instantly stuck to her side with toad steps. He turned into a clown with a black smiley face smeared on it, laughing and whispering crazily. The pervasive, crazily laughing virus was trying to drill into her brain through different gaps. Because it was a one-on-one battle, the solitary performer talent was also in effect. This crazy laughter was somewhat similar to the blasphemous voice in the crazy abyss, making Sally gradually become manic. Boom! Black Goat Sally's hooves stomped heavily on the ground. The forest was trembling, and a mushroom tower not far away collapsed. A distorted and terrifying black goat phantom appeared behind Sally, forcibly dispersing the crazily laughing. Who are you? Why are you able to whisper like the voice in the crazy abyss?" "Crazy abyss? What is that?" Han Dong was confused. He was only using crazily laughing to affect her consciousness. At this moment, perhaps it was because of Han Dong's crazily laughing, or perhaps it was because of Sally's trampling. It had alerted a certain existence in the forest. Both Han Dong and Sally felt a sense of danger. Cold sweat even dripped down their foreheads. This is the Creed Forest in the Dreamlands. "Oh no, did we alert that existence? We need to leave now." The two tried to cut off the connection with the Dreamlands at the same time, but it was to no avail. They could not wake up. Their consciousness seemed to be trapped in the dream. Then, countless nightmares flew out from the steel forest. A powerful existence, wrapped in a cloak, appeared in the forest. Two eyes were frozen in a strange and unnatural position. One was close to the top, the other was lower, and the mouth was in between the two eyes. He looked down at the two little fellows who disturbed his observation of the stars. When he looked at Sally, he said in an extremely ancient language, primordial. Then, when he looked at Han Dong, The eyes that were frozen on his head shifted up and down, but he did not comment. Instead, he revealed a strange smile. He had no intention of attacking the two juniors. With a wave of his hand, the nightmares circling Han Dong and Sally all retreated, following him back into the forest. Chapter 1060. Splash, the water in the bathtub overflowed. Han Dong and Sally's consciousness returned from the Dreamlands at the same time. They had just disturbed an old king in the Dreamlands, and he was one of the most powerful beings in the Dreamlands. The terror of Okdini, the ancestor of evil filth, the omniscient one who is second only to the void, the king of nightmares in the Dreamlands. The different names that came from the alien demon circle were spoken by Sally one after another. In her panic, the black veil that covered her face fell off. A cold and fair face was revealed, and at the same time, there was a paw print on her cheek. According to rumors, his position in the Dreamlands is similar to the Void in the real world. He is responsible for the overall operation of the Dreamlands, the spatial arrangement, and the flow of time. Just now, I must have been too agitated and disturb his work by stomping on him. According to rumors, this king of nightmares has an unpredictable temper. He probably thought that we were in the London game, so he did not go too far. If we really angered him, we would be trapped in the Dreamlands forever. By then, only your mother would be able to save us. So many nightmares, no wonder he is. Sally, who had always been reserved, was flustered by the unexpected encounter with such a powerful being. In comparison, Han Dong, who had met many powerful beings, was calm. Due to the appearance of this old king, his interest in the Dreamlands increased exponentially. Sally became more and more agitated as she spoke. Even Meritus, who was sleeping on the other side of the bed, was about to be awakened. Seeing this, Han Dong quickly reached out to cover Sally's mouth. "Miss Sally, please calm down. We are fine, aren't we? We only caught a glimpse of his face. It is no big deal. Furthermore, this old king's attitude towards us is between friendly and neutral. It is fine." With Han Dong's words, Sally's agitation slowly calmed down. Just like that, her black, gem-like eyes stared at Han Dong for a full 10 seconds. All of a sudden, Sally realized something. She quickly moved Han Dong's arm away and put the black veil back on. You have passed. The plan will definitely work. Why don't we set off now?" To avoid awkwardness, Sally changed the topic back to the plan. Han Dong, on the other hand, was still thinking about the dream. Since it's already set for tomorrow night, there's no need to change it. It just so happens that we also need to take a break. After all, looking directly at such an existence in the dreamland will more or less affect our brains. Yes. Sally, who had gradually calmed down, stopped straddling Han Dong. A black goat's hoof stepped out of the bathtub. She then stood in front of the bathroom mirror in a dignified manner, trying her best to calm down the ripples in her heart. Han Dong, on the other hand, didn't have much psychological fluctuation. His brain could withstand anything. He just lay in the bathtub, using Meritus's tender thigh as a pillow, and said leisurely, "Miss Sally, I have a question. Would there be danger in Dreamlands as well? I thought that since Dreamlands was a backup world created by the hybrid demons would live in harmony." When Sally heard this, she revealed a look of disdain. "The word harmony is only suitable for you humans, right? Danger, conflict, war, these are the food we need to grow. The so-called harmony is an extremely dangerous chronic poison. Prolonged harmony will slow down or even stop the development of an individual, a group, or even an entire civilization. We don't need such a thing." The reason why the old kings set up the land deeds and gave different privileges at the level of sovereignty was to ensure that war and conflict would continue to happen, promoting the growth of us hybrid demons and increasing the overall strength of the hybrid demons. Han Dong didn't deny this point. Under such a worldview, this was indeed the way to grow. "I'll go and rest for a while. See you tomorrow night." "Good night, Miss Sally." "Good night." Terror Hunter Campbell was patrolling the perimeter of the apartment. Sally, who returned to bed alone, was momentarily afraid. He hurriedly covered himself with a blanket, but his body was still trembling. The pressure brought about by a king was not ordinary, let alone an old king of the upper realm. Due to the disruption of work, the old king gave the two of them visual and mental pressure when he appeared. That was why Sally was so flustered after the incident. Sally, who was wrapped in the blanket, couldn't figure out one thing. How come it feels like that guy isn't affected? Kings are part of the truth. Their every word and action is related to the operation of the truth. The pressure from earlier almost caused me to fall into a state of confusion. Could it be that guy's brain? Yes. The more Sally thought about it, the more curious she became. She wanted to go into the bathroom to have a chat with the young man. But when she remembered her identity, she pulled the hose back under the blanket and went back to sleep. Inside the bathroom, not long after Sally left, Han Dong immediately stood up from the bathtub and vomited before the toilet. Curly hair, withered wings, colorful mushrooms, and even some finger-shaped twigs came out from his mouth. Han Dong, who appeared unaffected, was actually being targeted by the King of Nightmares. It was not Sally's heavy hooves that disturbed his work. Instead, it was Han Dong's maniacal laughter. I thought everyone in Dreamlands would be kind and friendly, but this is a psychological attack. The exchange of the upper and lower eyes caused more than 50% of my physical body to degenerate. If not for the yellow seal on me and the presence of the gray matter, I might have been killed by him. This is such a bad start. I need to adjust quickly. This series of vomiting lasted for half an hour. He vomited more than half of his body, causing his physical body to collapse. Unable to hold on, he fell to the side. His body was about to hit the ground. A gust of clear water wrapped around Han Dong's body and dragged him back into the bathtub. Feeling the water and softness, Han Dong fell asleep peacefully. The clear water seeped into his body through his pores, nourishing his body and helping Han Dong recover quickly in his sleep. When he woke up again, it was already the second night of the plan. Meritus was standing before the bathroom mirror, fixing her makeup, preparing to carry out the seduction plan that night. Mary, you didn't fall asleep completely last night, did you? I've grown a lot through the wall observation last time. Initially, I did fall asleep, but later on, you guys made a lot of noise, so I woke up. Considering that she's a primordial substance, I pretended to be asleep. Don't worry, you're the one I'm interested in. If you can form a good relationship with the fourth primordial substance, I'll be more than happy to. I'm not interested in goats. Han Dong smiled awkwardly. He held the gun with one hand and left the bathtub with the other. Chapter 1061. Inside the apartment. Black Goat Sally sat in the middle of the bed while the others sat around her, listening to her explain the upcoming plan. The missionary priest of Thorn's Guild, Serene. Nature, dark inhabitant, candle priest. Level, atavistic body. Recent changes. Due to consuming large amounts of unknown thorns in the participant's body, deep changes have occurred. Special attention is required. Summary of the plan. First, use charm to lure Serene from his residence to the abandoned church, the former Thorn Church, 2 streets away. Han Dong and Campbell would lie in ambush in the church. During this period, Campbell would circle the abandoned church in his snake form to ensure that no outsiders approached. When Serene entered the abandoned church and the mental invasion began, Campbell would use Wings of Terror to completely seal off the church. Nicholas would wait in a dark corner of the church for the target to arrive and cooperate with Sally to lure Serene to commit suicide. Black Goat Sally had already formulated the alibi, luring route, the layout of the suicide scene, and the method of suicide. There was no need to make any further changes. Han Dong quickly browsed through Sally's plan. All the details had been taken into account, and it was indeed a foolproof plan. The only variable was the 2 processes of temptation and suicide. The difficulty of the temptation was that they had to pass through 2 streets. It was very likely that they would encounter members of the church or even patrols from the Church of the Maelstrom. Since there are no problems, Campbell, you'll take Nicholas to the church district. Miss Mary will follow me directly to Serene's residence. We estimate that it will take an hour to lure him. During this time, you have to ensure that everything in the church district is normal. Take some time to check the decorations in the church. Okay, Miss Sally, you have to be careful. After Campbell gave some instructions, he revealed a pair of terrifying wings and prepared to fly directly to the abandoned church. He turned to look at Han Dong. This is a parallel space in London. Aerial surveillance is quite weak. If we fly there at the fastest speed, there's a high chance that we won't be exposed. Can you fly? If you can't, you can ride on me. The fact that the hot-tempered Mr. Terror actually made such a suggestion meant that he valued the current plan quite a lot. In fact, Han Dong wanted to ride it as well. He wanted to see how it felt to ride a flying serpent. However, considering that this young man was rather irritable, Han Dong decided against it. Flying isn't a problem. With that said, Han Dong activated the Crowman's essence stored within his body. A pair of broad skeletal wings spread out from his back. A few Crowman's feathers hung from his skeleton, giving off a thick black magic aura. Crowman? Campbell was slightly startled. Based on his understanding of Han Dong, the other party should be a bloodline descendant. Due to my special identity, I visited different land deeds all over the world. Once when I passed by the Crowman tribe, I received a gift from the Crow God. I obtained this pair of eyes through learning local black magic. Han Dong casually lied, and Campbell, who was about to take action, would not ask too much. Then, the two of them spread their wings and flew into the night sky. It had to be said that the sky was indeed this terrifying hunter's home ground. Han Dong had to expend a lot of effort just to barely catch up to him. After flying at high speed for less than 2 minutes, they arrived at their destination. Below the two of them was a ruin where the ratio of thorns to building wreckage was 2:1. There were still some individual remains left in the ruins. It seemed that an extremely terrifying growth of thorns had occurred in this building. No wonder you wanted to bring the priest here. The incident here must have something to do with him, right? Well, according to our understanding, a thorny disaster broke out in this former church due to management problems a month ago. The thorns overflowed from the bodies of the participants and, at the same time, excessively sucked the bodies of the condemned prisoners and some of the teachers, entering a state of crazy growth. It directly led to the destruction of the church and the death of a large number of teachers. Serene's priest, who was chosen by Sally, was supposed to be in charge of the candle lighting and auxiliary supervision in the church that day, but he left his post because of a woman. It was reasonable to let him commit suicide here, so no one would suspect. You arrange the scene according to Miss Sally's instructions. I will patrol the surroundings. Remember, try not to touch the thorns here. These things have fallen into a dormant state because they haven't eaten for a long time. Once they are fed, they will wake up. Got it. Not long after Campbell flapped his wings and flew away. Han Dong squatted in the dilapidated church, took out the holy sword, and cut off a strange section of thorns. Han Dong gave these thorns of unknown origin to Togu in his head for temporary preservation. It was necessary for Han Dong to study this substance that came from the participants of fate in depth. Missionary priest Sarai Narg, he lived in a standalone villa assigned by the church on Helm Street. Because he had an appointment with Sister Sally tonight, he was currently in the bedroom adjusting his body condition. In the pitch-black bathroom, the sound of sharp blades scraping hard objects constantly came out. At the same time, it was accompanied by the whispers of a male hybrid demon. Recently, my appetite has been increasing, and the changes in my body are starting to go out of control. However, I should be able to hold on tonight. This new believer is really interesting. Her body exudes a female scent that I have never smelled before. It will definitely let me experience a whole new world. There were many candles burning in the bathroom. These candles all came from the oil in Serene's body. Just like his nature as a dark inhabitant, candle priest, he was originally a rare type of dark inhabitant. He could secrete dark oil to make candles or directly release black flames with his body. He was originally a supervisor in a candle factory in London. Because of his self-degradation, he came here and became a priest of the Thorns Association. Reflected in the bathroom mirror was a man with a swollen body and oil constantly seeping out from his skin. He was using scissors to trim the thorns that grew on the surface of his skin. He had to maintain the appearance of a normal hybrid demon to meet Sister Sally. However, this process was abnormally painful. These thorns had become one with his body. Because he had eaten more than the church's regulations, Serene's body had uncontrollably turned into thorns. If one could observe his body, they would find that there were thorns on the surface of every organ. Even his blood vessels had turned into the structure of thorns and vines. His nature as a dark inhabitant was changing. For tonight's date, in order to indulge his lust, he endured the extreme pain and cleaned his body. Then, he wrapped his body full of oil with a thick windbreaker. Wearing a round hat and oversized leather shoes, he went downstairs and saw Sally, who he had been thinking about day and night. However, there was also a woman standing next to Sally. It was a hybrid demon he had never met before. "This is my good friend." Previously, she had been trapped in London. It was not easy for her to come here today. She also wants to join the Thorns Ascetic Order and hopes to have an in-depth talk with you tonight. Sally's words carried a seductive invasion. In addition, Meritus deliberately showed off her smooth and long legs, so the priest did not have too much suspicion. This priest was so greedy that he could not wait to do it here. However, considering his identity and some of the church's regulations, he could only hold back and follow Sally to the so-called secret location. Chapter 1062. Han Dong had already finished setting up the church according to Sally's request. Now, he was waiting for the two girls to lure the lecherous priest over. I believe that with Mary and the meticulous black goat, there shouldn't be any problems with the luring plan. But the process is really slow. Han Dong leaned against a corner with fewer thorns and looked up at Campbell, who was gliding in the sky. Although Campbell was like a follower of the black goat, his strength was still quite good. It seems that I still have to wait for a few minutes. Since I have nothing to do, why don't I try to examine the thorns? The scanner in my head should be able to get some information. Han Dong used his free time to immediately return to the biological laboratory in his head. He threw a section of thorns that he had just cut into the scanner and quickly received a scan document. Stigmata Thorns Summary, a substance not from this world. A large number of stigmata patterns from another world have been detected inside the thorns. This kind of thorns has a strong invasive ability to hybrid demon life forms, and it is also mutated and addictive. Hybrid demons that consume this substance for a long time will have their physical body change and become a thorn-type life form. Please remove the thorns to prevent them from growing and spreading in this world. Type: Saint Rank product usage. Non-hybrid demon life forms can obtain the related abilities of the stigmata, thorns through appropriate eating and whipping. Possible abilities obtained. 1. Thorns reflect damage to the attacker. The damage is 30% of the damage taken and 100% of the individual's armor. No matter if it is a physical or magical attack, it will trigger the damage reflection effect. 2. Pain of thorns. When attacking, there is an additional thorn special effect. There is a certain probability of ignoring armor and dealing direct damage to the target. The pain caused by the thorns is unavoidable, and 100% of the pain will be reflected back to the target. 3. Heart of Thorns, rare. The individual will become the carrier of the stigmata thorns. Origin. This type of saint rank plant originated from a higher world. Legend has it that in order to seek the truth, a sufferer crossed the sea of thorns on foot, using pain as food, vines as his path, and thorns as his pillow. When he crossed the sea and reached the other side of the sea, the entire sea of thorns merged into his body, helping him to step onto the saint rank and leave behind the name of a saint. Saint? The corresponding god rank of a higher world? As expected, the vortex wasn't the only substance that was effective against hybrid demons. These 4 participants who had gone to London all carried a special attribute that targeted the hybrid demons. They could even completely change the nature of the hybrid demons and turn them into another species. As expected, there was a purpose behind this. The participants who were sent here might have been arranged by the higher-ups of the Black Tower. However, from the description, this kind of thorns was a good thing for other species. When Togu came back, he would try to use it on him. Perhaps he would be able to obtain the ability of the thorns or achieve unexpected growth through the commonality of suffering. Moreover, the corpse of a participant who could grow stigmata thorns without restriction must be something good. Since everyone is focused on the vortex divinity, I could try to touch the corpses of the other 3 participants who did not receive miracle. Staring at the report of stigmata thorns, Han Dong had a crazy smile on his face. Just as Han Dong returned to the church, Campbell, who was hovering in the sky, suddenly descended. Get ready, the target has been lured over. We must successfully execute the plan and kill that guy. Oh, okay. Han Dong could clearly feel the fatal killing intent emitted by Campbell. It was as if the goddess in his heart had been taken advantage of by someone else. The communication ended. Campbell bent his knees slightly and spread out his terrifying wings. They were 10 meters wide on both sides. He spread his wings with all his strength. As a wave of air spread out in the church, his wings carried his body straight into the sky and hid in the clouds. Han Dong also hid in the depths of the church. He used his small magic eye to see through the wall and observe the situation outside the church. It was no wonder that Campbell was angry. Drip, drip, drip. Because Serene was too excited, a large amount of fat would drip with every step he took. Because the last part of the journey was almost empty, his fat arms were already on Sally's body, and he even took the opportunity to take advantage of her. Sally did not resist for the sake of the smooth execution of the plan. Instead, she catered to him appropriately. Mary Dis, on the other hand, pretended to be a pure and timid newcomer and kept a distance away. When he approached the abandoned church, Serene's spirit that was immersed in love suddenly trembled, as if he had woken up a little. Is the secret location you mentioned here? This is a restricted area. Trespassing will result in punishment. Sally pretended to be overflowing with love. She reached out and slid her hand across the priest's chest as she said charmingly, "It's because this is a restricted area that no one knows about us. Moreover, I like to do what I like in the church." After being provoked by Sally, the priest immediately fell into a quagmire of love and was unable to extricate himself. He couldn't care less. He walked into the church with the little beauty in his arms. At the same time, he didn't forget to look at Meritus behind him. When they entered the church, Sally deliberately broke free from his embrace and ran to the front of the sacrificial altar. She took off half of her clothes, revealing her fragrant shoulders and jade-like back. This action activated the charm seed that was parasitic in the priest's head to the greatest extent, and his consciousness defense was almost reduced to 0. Ignoring all obstacles, he pounced on Sally with heavy steps, just as his fat fingers were about to touch Sally's back. A burst of laughter that seemed to come from a crazy abyss echoed in the church. A strong and irresistible suicidal thought was forcefully implanted in the priest's cerebellum along with the laughter. Like a virus, the impulses of consciousness spread wildly and covered the impulses of love and lust in his head in a few seconds. The priest turned to look at the stigmata, thorns in the church. He chose the toughest part and hung it on the remaining roof beam of the church. He was prepared to end his sinful life by hanging. Such a method of hanging would cause the thorns to pierce his throat. The thorns in the abandoned church had not eaten for a long time. When they sensed fresh food, they would inevitably suck it dry in an instant. Moreover, such a method of suicide would make it seem that the priest of Sarion chose to end his life with thorns because he couldn't let go of the mistakes he had made in this church. It was completely reasonable. At this time, Sally, who was lying in front of the sacrificial altar, had put on half of her clothes again. She looked at Han Dong, who was hiding in the dark, and gave him a high evaluation. As expected of you, the effect is really good. The other party's consciousness is completely occupied by lust. It's not difficult at all. Miss Sally is equivalent to sending white meat to my mouth. If I can't swallow it, I'm too useless. The two of them cooperated with each other and praised each other. At the same time, the priest also hung his neck. Next, they only needed to wait for the thorns to completely suck him dry. Everyone carefully checked the scene once, and the matter would be perfectly executed. But that minuscule accident still happened. These hungry thorns in the abandoned church did not absorb the priest. Instead, they had a homologous response and madly rushed into the priest's body. Such a phenomenon had never happened even in the thorns' ascetic order. The priest of Sarion, who was originally deeply thorny, took the last step under such a coincidence. Ready to transform his physical body, completely relieved of the thought of suicide, and a large number of stigmata thorns, together, allowed him to completely get rid of the attributes of the hybrid demon and undergo a fundamental transformation toward a saint-level monster in a different world. Every inch of his skin was rewoven with slender thorns, and his eyeballs were full of dense spikes. A terrifying monster that could not be determined was slowly being formed. Chapter 1063. The Ruins of the Thorn Ascetic Order's Original Church. The thorns here had once caused the deaths of dozens of teachers. The thorns that had not eaten for a long time should be in a state of extreme hunger. Once they tasted the flesh of the hybrid demons, they would definitely suck it dry. It was because of this that Sally chose to commit suicide here. She was sure that nothing would go wrong, but something unexpected happened. The priest's special body state actually allowed him to perfectly merge with the thorns through suicide. Campbell, who was hovering in the sky, suddenly descended and covered the church with his terrifying wings, temporarily isolating the situation inside and outside. Since the accident had already happened, they could only change suicide to forcibly kill. As for how to deceive the world, they could only think about it after the incident. The problem in front of them was how to kill Priest Serene, who had transformed into a saint-level monster. His essence was no longer a hybrid demon. His body was reconstructed, and his soul was branded with the holy mark from another world. Waves of powerful divinity from another world gushed out from the thorn holy body. However, it seemed that something was still missing. This transformation was not enough to be called a miracle. It was still a bit away from the mythical realm. From a mouth full of thorns, he shouted hysterically, "I need that corpse. I will ascend to the saint level." Serene's original bloated body had been reconstructed by the thorns. In front of everyone was a 4-meter-tall saint-level monster that had completely merged with the thorns in the abandoned church. It was an immortal monster with the divinity of another world, thorn attribute. A monster that could specifically target hybrid demons. The saint-level aura that it released even made Black Goat Sally, who was the fourth prime, tremble in fear. Meritus also immediately leaned towards Handong. The hybrid demons could instinctively feel fatal danger. Even Campbell, who had sealed the church, could only secretly grit his teeth. If he had to face such a monster alone, his chances of winning were very small. What he needed to do was to isolate the church and let this matter be resolved secretly. At the scene, only one person's expression was not quite the same. Han Dong looked at the greasy priest who had transformed into a saint-level monster because of his suicide. He did not tremble in fear, nor did he have the slightest fear. Instead, he revealed an expression of excitement, desire, and even extreme excitement. Little magic I could see through a person's life structure to a certain extent. The seemingly complicated thorns were actually reconstructing the body according to a unique rule. So beautiful. He didn't expect that the stigmata thorns could bring about such a transformation. This guy had completely broken away from the category of hybrid demons and transformed into a kind of saint-level life form from another world. However, he seemed to be lacking something. No matter how many thorns there were, they were not the main body of the stigmata thorns. In order to complete the final transformation, he had to devour the source of the stigmata thorns, which was the bodies of the participants stored in the depths of the church. When the time comes, I might be able to achieve mythical structure and become a mythical existence. Sally's expression darkened. The plan had clearly been completed, but an accident had occurred in the end. Campbell, do your best to seal off the church. You guys should also help stabilize the situation here. Don't let this matter leak out. Otherwise, a month's effort will be wasted. Once our identities are exposed, we won't be able to continue staying here. We'll disappoint Mother. I'll deal with it. Sally chose to let her 3 teammates take care of the space lock while she dealt with the bramble monster alone. Just as she finished giving her orders, she raised the unhumanized goat's hoof about half a meter. A dark purple spell appeared at the bottom of the hoof. She stomped down. Forest Trample, a black goat god statue covered with eyeballs, appeared behind her. A powerful black forest divinity was released. It was not weaker than the bramble monster in front of her. Boom! She stomped down. The bramble monster was completely unable to withstand such a heavy stomp and instantly turned into slag. The abandoned church's terrain also sank. In the central area of the church, there was also a terrifying hoof pit that was constantly emitting black gas. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The bramble grew in a second. It reconstructed its original form in the hoof pit. This scene made Sally turn pale with fright. What? That stomp just now contained the most evil curse of the Black Forest. Once an organism is crushed, it will be eroded by the power of the curse. How can it regenerate so quickly? Is it really an attribute restraint? Just as Sally was still in shock, whoosh, 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 a series of thorns shot at him from all directions, leaving no room for him to dodge. Sally naturally did not show any weakness. She stretched out her right arm. Dark, lustrous tentacles grew crazily from her arm. The number was equal to the number of thorns. The tentacles and thorns intertwined in the air. One had to know that Sally's tentacle level was higher than any of the hybrid demons present. With the pure bloodline of the black goat, it was not much worse than some elementary mythical bodies. But attribute restraint. The stigmata thorns had an absolute restraining effect on the hybrid demons. When the two intertwined, the thorns on the surface of the thorns grew crazily, piercing the tentacles and sucking the essence inside. Sally trembled in pain. In order to prevent the energy in her body from being completely drained, she could only endure the pain and forcibly cut off a part of the tentacles. Whoosh! The dark purple tentacles were broken off. The tentacles that were separated from the main body were immediately sucked dry by the thorns. Then more thorns grew out. Taking advantage of the fact that Sally was weak due to the pain from the tentacles, the priest suddenly waved his hand. Hundreds of thorns attacked from the front, weaving into a terrifying head of thorns, intending to swallow Sally. At the critical moment, a strong aura of death condensed. Wall of the Dead, the thin and weak left arm reflected D.U.A.T. Egypt's underworld. The virtual image of Anubis emerged. With a raise of his hand, a thick wall piled up by countless underworld dead blocked in front of Sally. The divinity of this wall had nothing to do with the hybrid demons. Naturally, it would not be restrained by the thorns. When the stigmata thorns hit the wall, their vitality was immediately sucked away and a large area decayed and withered. However, the strength displayed by the thorns was still amazing. Even the withered thorns were still destroying the wall under the priest's control. Loose grains of sand scattered all over the ground. However, when the Wall of the Dead completely collapsed, Sally and the others had disappeared. The wings of terror that covered the church had also been removed. Apartment. Under Han Dong's forceful suggestion, everyone retreated from the abandoned church and returned here. Sally was a little puzzled by Han Dong's suggestion to retreat. She had not used her full strength yet. It was only because it was her first time facing a thorny monster that she was defeated because of her restraint. Why do we have to leave? If we can completely seal off the situation and completely kill the target, we might be able to fake a suicide scene and continue our plan. Now that things have been exposed, our plan has failed. Let's prepare to leave London. Han Dong revealed an excited smile and said softly, "No." The plan succeeded, and it was even more successful than the original plan. What do you mean? When Miss Sally was fighting just now, I have been secretly observing. I have confirmed the following 3 points. 1. This priest is no longer a hybrid demon. He has turned into a thorny monster from another world. It should be called a saint-level life. 2. His consciousness is completely chaotic, and his rationality does not exist for the time being. 3. His target is not us. It is only because you attacked him, Sally, that he fought back. He is missing a crucial thing, causing him to have only one thought: to seize the bodies of the participants in the depths of the Church of Thorns. No one will know that we are related to this matter, and the priest will become a public enemy and create a large-scale chaos. Are you sure? Sally was a little surprised. Don't worry. His brain is already covered with thorns, and his structure has changed. His memory file no longer exists. Even if the church investigates, they will not be able to trace it back to us. Miss Sally, quickly return to the Thorns Union and help them fight against this monster. With this achievement, you might be able to take over the position of Serene's priest. Chapter 1064. For the sake of convenience, the words watch and inside were used to represent the City of London and its parallel world. City of London. The dark forest outside the city was essentially the border defense of the City of London. In the dark forest surrounding the London basin, there were hundreds of thousands of dark evils, including skeletons, black rock monsters, tree spirits, and so on. Once they grew into hybrid demons, they would be qualified to enter the city. Before that, this group of evils acted as scouts in the forest. Their death message would be sensed by the priests in the village in the basin. Once there was a large number of deaths, it meant that there were intruders. At that time, the priests in the village would send hybrid demon scouts to further confirm the situation. The current situation in the dark forest was somewhat different. No scouts came here to investigate, or rather, they did not dare to come here. There were thousands of evil's corpses piled up here. The broken bones were used as a support. The broken stones were used as a foundation, and the viscous meat was used as an adhesive to build a temporary throne. A crazy young man was sitting on the throne built by him. Because of the rules of the London game, he maintained a human posture. He was skinny, like an African poor person who lacked protein. His height of about 1.7 meters made him look quite ordinary. His messy black hair hung loosely on his body. Because of boredom, he gnawed on skull skewers in this way to relieve boredom and grind his teeth. His eyes had the appearance of a cavernous pupil. In other words, the white area of the eyes was normal, but the pupil was inwardly sunken, like a bottomless hole. This eye structure allowed him to spy on the situation in the City of London. It's almost time to start the game. Let's go, Ross. Following the young man's shout, a stinky portal connected to a planet in the universe opened. On the other side of the portal corresponded to a horrifying planet piled up with rotten flesh and full of devastation. This planet was also listed as a hybrid demon. A terrifying life form that looked like a dog inhabited it. They were the most evil, primitive beasts. Once they locked onto their prey, neither time nor space could stop them. They were barely classified as hybrid demons, but they did not belong to any of the old kings. They were a rare advanced, independent life form. However, there were still some arrogant mantis demons who tried to go to this planet to enslave these terrifying beasts and use them as their personal mounts. Of course, most of the mantis demons died in the process of enslavement and became food for these hunting dogs. However, there were also a very small number of people who were successfully enslaved and even received the recognition of the entire planet. He obtained a terrifying beast that could easily travel through space, the Hounds of Tindalos. This young man was one of them. He had already signed a contract with this planet, allowing him to obtain the assistance of the hunting Hounds of Tindaros in any region of the world. A dog-like life form with ashes floating around its body walked out of the portal. Its long and pointy head could be divided into 4, completely splitting apart like flower spots, revealing the extremely terrifying structure of its mouth. It was equipped with multiple mouth parts that could secrete void acid. a tongue that could easily penetrate bones and suck out brains. They also had sharp teeth that could bite through space and jump through space. Its torso was sturdy and twisted. 6 tentacles with a hook and sickle structure floated on its surface. They could not only smash enemies to pieces, but also make it convenient for them to move forward stably in the spatial tunnel. When such a beast appeared, the crazy young man on the throne easily rode on it. He reached out and grabbed the tentacles on the back of the hounds, controlling the hounds to rush toward the city of London. The young man riding the hounds would frequently tear through space while he was rushing forward. It was quite strange that he would sometimes advance and sometimes retreat. However, following the movement of the young man, the entire dark forest became active. Some of the atavistic demons who had been hiding in the forest in advance were waiting for the young man to move. The mad demon has finally moved. Let's go too. With his ability, he will be able to easily tear open the dark side of the city of London. We can also enter safely. Teams of 2 or 3 atavistic demons came from the forest to the basin area. They all followed the rules of the game and headed toward the city of London in human form. Some floated in the air, some sat on the shoulders of giants, and some crawled on all fours. The London game officially kicked off. City of London. The Thorn Church had already sounded the alarm. Priest Serene, who had transformed into a saint-rank monster, was on his way. The church's deacon immediately reported the situation to the Maelstrom Church. However, the church had no intention of interfering. They only sent a few official teachers to assist. They mainly let the Thorn Church deal with it themselves. It seemed that they had more important things to do. Blackgoat Sally and Campbell had already become members of the Thorn Church. They were guarding the church's gate, waiting for the upcoming battle with the Thorn Monster. Sally had already prepared the equipment to kill the enemy and planned to take the opportunity to sit on the priest's seat. As for Han Dong, he stayed on the roof of a building near the church and quietly observed the situation of the Thorn Church. It's still growing. Walking from the abandoned church to here, did it absorb all the thorns along the way? If this guy really gets the participant's corpse, it will be really troublesome. In Han Dong's vision, the thorn monster walking on the street had reached a height of 8 meters. At the same time, it also turned the unlucky people along the way into a kind of thorn corpse. Its appearance and posture were similar to that of a zombie. After locking onto a target, it could explode at an extremely high speed to hug the target and then self-destruct. The thorns would pierce into the target's body and cause a stigmata invasion, which was quite fatal for the hybrid demons. When the priest arrived at the church's gate, a medium-sized battle instantly broke out. Since the stigmata thorns had the effect of turning the dead into a thorn corpse, the battle became extremely difficult. Blackgoat Sally didn't use her full strength at the beginning. That would easily expose her identity. She planned to delay until the later stage to kill it at a crucial moment to realize her self-worth. Since the church's gate was constantly being pushed back, almost all of the Thorn Church's guards were mobilized. Combined with the information that Sally gave in advance, Han Dong counted the number of teachers who came to support with his naked eye. Mary, let's go. Let's go to the depths of the church to see the corpse. I want to see what kind of participant fate arranged to test our world. Even after death, thorns can still grow without limit. Chapter 1065. Han Dong's Book of Necromancy, lead copy, improved his stealth. Meritus turned into a toad bead and was swallowed by Han Dong to improve his spatial affinity. Faceless disguise allowed him to disguise himself as a Thorn Society instructor. Unless someone took out the church's list for comparison, it would be difficult to see through Han Dong's disguise. In the dark night, Han Dong quickly approached the side of the church. Using the hole created by the explosion of the thorn corpse, he quickly sneaked into the church and disguised himself as an instructor to fight against the intruders. He then used his magic eye to search for the secret door leading to the underground area, while everyone's attention was on the Saint Tier monster. Void toad steps. With a burst of starlight, Han Dong had passed through the hidden door. He successfully arrived at the underground area of the Thorn Society, which was the secret cellar where the participants' corpses were stored. The scale of the cellar was far larger than Han Dong expected. A circular, multi-layered cellar structure. Only a lift in the middle was used to move between floors. There were many layers of seals at the bottom, which required identity verification to open. Presumably, the participants' corpses that kept growing thorns must be sealed at the bottom. A total of 8 floors of the ring-shaped cellar imprisoned a large number of evil creatures from the dark forest, mainly flesh and blood creatures. When these poor creatures saw Han Dong disguised as an instructor, they all showed fear in their eyes, afraid that they would be chosen. Han Dong didn't express his opinion for the time being and took the lift to the bottom. The round stone was the eye of the formation. It was engraved with the seal of the Dark Dwellers, which sealed the secret room at the bottom. Even so, a large number of stigmata thorns still overflowed from the cracks around the round stone, constantly consuming the seal's energy. Presumably, an instructor will come here every once in a while to repair and replenish the seal's energy. Just right. I only need to use the thorns to destroy the seal. My body fluid should be a great supplement for this thing, right? After saying that, Han Dong's right hand grew a gray tentacle full of spots, actively allowing the thorns around the round stone to absorb it. Serene was in a lot of pain, but the effect was very good. After absorbing the gray tentacle, the thorns grew rapidly as if they had been injected with oxytocin. In just 2 minutes, the energy of the seal was exhausted, and the round stone was completely crushed. Han Dong immediately stepped into it. What greeted his eyes was a rather sinister scene. Han Dong's question about how the corpses kept growing thorns had also been answered. In the center of the platform, there was a strange participant's corpse. Even though the stench was overwhelming and the evil energy was overflowing, the corpse was unaffected and abnormally clean. Han Dong could not help but think of Miss Jane. However, due to Miss Jane's obsession with cleanliness, she was constantly cleaning the surrounding environment with her magic domain. But because of the nature of this corpse, it was not contaminated and always maintained the state of chastity. In the meantime, there were also 10 fixed seats set up around the secret chamber. The evil creatures selected from the cellar would be brought here by the instructors and tied to the chairs as food for the participants' corpses. The corpses that were full would grow new thorns for the instructors to eat, so that everyone could obtain the power from the thorns. Not only the evil creatures, but also some dark creatures who made mistakes would be eaten as food. Such a scene. At first glance, it looked very sinister. At second glance, it seemed ridiculous. At third glance, Han Dong felt an invisible threat. The evil was that the church used the method of live feeding to obtain thorns. The ridiculous thing was that the hybrid demons actually used their own kind as food for the invaders to use. They also tried to obtain the invaders' ability from the invaders and even wanted to cause a miracle to happen. The threat was that just one participant's corpse had caused the situation of group corruption and cannibalism. This was only a small test in the Black Tower world. If the real threat came, the world would usher in a huge disaster. Black sand flowed on his left arm, and a blood dog barked on his right arm. Han Dong made the most comprehensive preparations and slowly walked to the platform that carried the corpse. In front of Kieran was a headless humanoid body, and the thorns were growing at the neck, or rather, the participant didn't have a head at all. The corpse was wearing a set of robes with golden thorns drawn on it. It came from the world where he came from, and it could identify his identity to a certain extent. After confirming that there was no danger, Han Dong immediately began to examine the corpse. He carefully took off the robes on the corpse, as if he was looking for something. Soon, Han Dong found the mark he expected. At the bottom of the corpse's neck, there was a black vortex mark. It was the same as the black vortex on Han Dong's body. It represented the Black Tower Pass. As expected, this is a participant related to the Black Tower. Since this is the case, the participant who came to London was almost certainly sent by the Black Tower. Whether it was the Vortex Corpse that caused the miracle, or this Thorns Corpse, or the other two participants, their abilities could be used against the hybrid demons. This was why they were chosen by the Black Tower to come to London to carry out the Destiny event. Or they took the initiative to come to our not yet fully controlled world to test the Destiny event through the bounty issued by the Black Tower. If the test is successful, the reward will be much higher than the normal Destiny event. Most likely, this is the case. While Han Dong stared at the corpse and fell into deep thought, Mary's voice came from inside his body. "Nicholas, what are you doing?" Even if the seal was broken by the thorns, the teachers above will definitely know and send people down to check. Since the corpse is not a threat to you, quickly take the corpse and leave. Something's not right. What's not right? Mary, you're right. The teachers here will definitely know about the opening of the barrier. The corpse is the object of worship of this group of teachers, is the foundation of the cult, and is even more important than their own lives. I've been delayed for so long. A group of teachers will definitely come down to check. I didn't expect to be able to sneak out from the beginning. But until now, not a single teacher has come down. Did something happen up there? Could it be that the Black Mountain Goat's identity was exposed and it killed all the teachers here? No. Miss Sally is too cautious to make such a low-level mistake. Let's go up and take a look. Through the previous physical contact and various tests, he confirmed that the corpse was not dangerous. Han Dong raised his left hand, and an ancient Egyptian coffin sealed the corpse in it and put it into a portable prison. When they took the elevator back to the church, Han Dong vaguely smelled a strange aura. It was an aura that could stimulate the central nervous system and make an individual fall into madness. When he pushed open the secret door of the cellar, the scene in front of him could be described as corpses strewn everywhere. All the teachers of the Thorns Union were dead. Most of their limbs were incomplete, as if they had been bitten by some ferocious beast. Even the priest of Serene, who had tried to invade the church and turned into a saint-level monster, was completely dead. Only broken thorns were left. At the entrance of the church, a skinny young man was riding on the back of a hound that made Han Dong's heart tremble. Sally the Black Mountain Goat revealed part of her true form. Dark purple tentacles fluttered behind her. Campbell also spread his wings and grew a large number of isomorphic tentacles and sharp claws to confront the young man on the hound. Han Dong appeared. The young man also turned his gaze over. His eyes were like caves. When he looked at Han Dong, his heart trembled. He had a strange feeling that he was about to be sucked in. Chapter 1066. The young man riding on the hound's back seemed uninterested in Han Dong, who was only emitting the aura of a mature body. He only paused for a moment before turning his gaze to his main target, which was Sally. "Sally, are you still playing house here? The London game has begun. Not only me, Hopper and Eugenius are here too. Of course, there are also a group of reckless fellows who want to take the opportunity to make a fortune. However, the more people there are, the more fun the game will be. The rebels hiding here have already sounded the alarm. Other than some remnants here, all the rebels have holed up in Big Ben in the center of London. Sally, do you want to make a bet? With a pet as the wager. Let's bet on who will touch the miracle first. Cadatha's predatory flying snake. I've never had such a pet before." As soon as she said this, Campbell's face turned ferocious. However, it was only a change in expression. Campbell knew very well that if he acted rashly, he would be killed on the spot, and his soul would be dragged into the abyss of madness. The young man in front of him was the first prime, Mad Devil Christopher J. Green, who was even more powerful than Sally. Moreover, it was rumored that this Mad Devil had been acknowledged by the Hound of Tindaros, and it was now confirmed. Just this hound alone was enough to threaten the lives of everyone present. Campbell isn't my pet, but my partner. Sally continued to strengthen her aura. Even the ground around her turned into a swamp, and a large number of babies kept crawling out. She tried her best to have an aura that did not belong to the madman in front of her. "Miss Sally, you're still perfect as a female. Since you're sure that this flying snake isn't your pet, why don't we change the wager? We'll use a month's worth of slavery as the wager. How about it? If you don't agree, I'll kill all of you." The young man revealed a terrifying smile under his messy hair. If Sally didn't agree to such a wager, he would really make a move. Even if this London game was under the surveillance of the old kings, including the mother behind Sally, this young man didn't have any scruples and killed without hesitation. A madman like him did whatever he wanted without caring about the consequences. It could even be said that he was in a good mood today. A month's worth of slavery was already a relatively friendly wager. However, such a wager change immediately caused conflict. The bet changed from Camber to Sally. In Campbell's heart, it was fine if he said that he was a dog. Even if he said that he was a dog, Campbell would still be able to endure it in front of such an expert. However, he would never allow anyone to talk about Sally. For a moment, a terrifying aura overflowed from his wings. Suddenly, an ice-cold and soft arm landed on Campbell's shoulder, suppressing his agitated emotions. At the same time, Sally's gentle voice sounded. If the result of impulsiveness is death, it's still acceptable. However, your impulsiveness will cause you to fall into the abyss of madness. It's not worth it. Campbell immediately restrained himself and lowered his head in silence. A smile appeared on Sally's face. "All right, I agree to this bet." The young man riding on the back of the hound got a satisfactory answer and stopped pestering. He made a gesture of goodbye. "I'm looking forward to it. 1 month of slavery. Maybe you can give birth to a city-level son for me." Ha ha ha. Actually, I was only mildly interested in the miracles here. I was more interested in killing these ignorant traitors. Now that I have Miss Sally's answer, I am even more motivated. Crazy laughter echoed in the streets. The Yandalus hound bit through space and left with the young man on its back. This lunatic. I knew he would target me. It was the same in the previous Origin Essence game. I think Mother deliberately let me participate in this game and meet this lunatic. Indeed, if I can combine with this lunatic, the Black Forest will also be protected by that existence. Even if a true calamity descends, the Black Forest will not be invaded for a long time. There was not much anger in Sally's eyes. Instead, there was melancholy and compromise. As a black goat with pure blood flowing in the Black Forest, she should bear a certain responsibility. Now, the situation in London had changed. The overall mode and rhythm of the game had changed because of the arrival of this lunatic. The main storyline of the London game was no longer about infiltration and infiltration. Instead, it had changed to direct annihilation of the traitors in London. The identity of the priest of the Thorn Church that Sally wanted to fight for had become meaningless. Just when Sally felt that the advantage in her hands no longer existed, a voice came from behind her. "Is that the first Origin Essence that you mentioned just now? It's really terrifying. It seems that he didn't do much, but the Thorn Church's instructors have all died." Sally sighed softly. "Sigh? I didn't expect the rumors to be true. After this lunatic won the title of First Origin Essence, he actually went to that terrifying planet that was not under the control of the old kings. He was recognized and signed the Treaty of Yandalus. The one who purged this place was his mount, the Yandalus Hound." The Yandalus Hound? Sounds interesting. Han Dong was personally interested in the young man. Han Dong was very interested in the young man's hunting hound. After all, Han Dong had always been envious of Mr. Black White's raven carriage. He also wanted to have an epic mount, especially just now. The hound actually tore through space with its teeth. That was even more interesting. When you go to that planet, you won't say such things. Only a true lunatic can do such a thing. Han Dong listened to the conversation in the church the entire time. Looking at Sally's expression and listening to her tone, he could roughly guess something. Han Dong suddenly suggested, "Miss Sally, can you make a bet with me? What do you want? This lunatic is too arrogant and confident. Maybe we can use his personality to gain some benefits for us. If I can help Miss Sally touch the miracle in the Church of the Swirling Vortex in advance, I hope Miss Sally can tell me how to sign the Treaty of Yandalus." If the two of them had just met, Sally would have ignored Han Dong's words. However, Han Dong's previous performance was very amazing. If it weren't for this lunatic, the plan would have succeeded. You haven't come into contact with this lunatic, so you don't know how powerful he is. He looks crazy, but in fact, he has his own unique strategy and layout. In the Origin Essence game, he was once evaluated as a rational lunatic by the existence in the void. Moreover, our advantage no longer exists. The situation has changed, and it's difficult to catch up with him. No, I still have two advantages that can be used. As he spoke, Han Dong pointed to his black vortex torso with one hand and the thorny corpse he brought out from the cellar with the other. Since the rebels in the city of London have changed to a defensive position with a mythical body in charge, it won't be easy to attack from the front. I'm a swirling vortex instructor who came here through the Book of Initiation ceremony. When my clone's trial is over, I can directly report to the headquarters. It's hard to say who will touch the miracle first. How about it? Let's play, Miss Sally. Chapter 1067. Campbell, the Wing of Terror, had always had a certain opinion of Han Dong. But this time, he chose to stand on Han Dong's side and supported Han Dong's suggestion. Miss Sally, since we have already accepted the bet, why don't we follow Nicholas's suggestion and try to break in from the inside? If we encounter that lunatic in the process of infiltrating, I will use all my strength to block the Hound of Tindaros. Although the wager only corresponded to a 1-month slave contract, it was still not enough. Even Sally would not be able to withstand being toyed with by that lunatic for a month. Her spirit and thoughts would even be crazily devoured, and she would completely fall into the abyss. At that time, Sally would probably permanently become his. She would even lose her title of being the Fourth Origin. Campbell knew very well that whether it was the bloodline flowing in his body or his strength, he was not comparable to Sally. However, he was not willing to let Sally fall into the hands of such a lunatic. Even if he was not worthy, he had to at least protect her. Han Dong had indeed shown an advantage. There was no need to sit and wait for death. Okay, let's give it a try. Although Sally nodded and accepted Han Dong's bet suggestion, she was clearly not in a good state. Her was slightly depressed. They returned to the apartment for the time being. Han Dong went to the bathroom with the excuse that he was dirty in the cellar. In fact, he wanted to fight for some privacy and ask Mary about some things. After all, Black Goat Sally's mood changed a lot. Han Dong could read a look of compromise from Sally's eyes. If he could not figure out the relationship between them, there might be problems with the following plan. Since it was only a short time, they used the shower method to talk. The water from the shower head landed on Mary's body and replenished her moisture. Her clothes were all wet as a result, and a cute round face slowly appeared under her wet hair. She took the initiative to pull Han Dong in from outside. She scrubbed his back and cleaned the stains in the cellar. However, Han Dong could faintly feel that even the prideful Merida's hands were trembling slightly as she scrubbed his back. The image of the first original riding the Tindaros hound had clearly given Mary a mental blow. Miss Mary, you should have seen the situation just now. Why would Sally compromise? Didn't she have the pure Black Mountain goat blood flowing in her body? Moreover, with her identity as the fourth prime essence, she should be highly valued by King Ying. I remember you mentioned it in the Dark Forest. Isn't the black goat also an old king? What is she worried about? An extremely flexible tongue stuck out from Merida's mouth and lingered around Han Dong's ears. While massaging his ears, she said in a seductive voice, "Don't worry. You are indeed a human. You don't even know this." Just now, if Sally didn't agree to that lunatic, we might have all been killed. Even if there were many old Wangdu watching the situation in London, this guy still dared to make a move. Even if the black goat was furious, that lunatic would at most be confined for a period of time. The blood flowing in his body comes from an existence that we can't pry into. It is the origin of chaos, the ultimate disaster, and also infinite madness. Above the old king, I'm not sure about this. In my knowledge, the old king is already the highest existence. I only heard that even if a king sees the existence behind the lunatic, he will temporarily take off his crown and lower his status. He is the ruler of the crazy abyss and the creator of the hybrid demon system. As a toad person, Meritus had an attitude of absolute reverence when she described this existence that she had never seen before. No wonder. Han Dong immediately understood the problem. It was very simple. Using humans as an analogy, it was like a princess of a weak country marrying a prince of a strong country. Through marriage, they could stabilize the country's foundation and seek protection. Of course, the relationship between the hybrid demons was inevitably more complicated, but it was basically the same meaning. Nicholas, we only have a temporary partnership with this goat. There's no need to risk our lives for her, right? If we offend that existence, because of this, even the Bufo can't protect us. Are you really going to help her? Han Dong quickly waved his hand to deny. Please don't misunderstand, Miss Mary. I'm only interested in the Saint World behind the London invaders, which is the corresponding Saint World behind the participants. I even suspect that the so-called Saint World is a high-level world that was specially modified by Black Fate to deal with us, and the Saint World products from the other world can threaten the essence of the hybrid demons. I even suspect that the divinity of the whirlpool may be a dose of poison to the hybrid demons. If it is absorbed by a certain hybrid demon, it may cause a disaster. I already have the corpse of a participant in my hands. If I can obtain the other corpses, I can also obtain more information. In addition, I'm also very interested in the mount of the mad demon. This hunting dog that can travel through space by biting is very compatible with my attributes. It's a great mount. Ha! Ha! Han Dong couldn't suppress the crazy laughter in his body. His head leaned against the wall of the bathroom, and his whole body almost twitched from laughing. There was no reason, just because he was too excited. For a moment, Meritus stopped scrubbing his back. She stared at the young man in front of her who was laughing crazily and had a very strange feeling. She even felt that Han Dong might be the same type of person as the first origin demon. Not long after Han Dong came out of the bathroom, there was a knock on the door of the apartment. Just when everyone was alert, Han Dong signaled everyone not to be nervous. The door opened. Outside stood a young man with whip scars all over his body. His skin was burned, and he even had 3 broken fingers. His appearance was exactly the same as Han Dong. Obviously, he had been tortured inhumanly. However, there was no pain or despair on the young man's face. Instead, there was a sense of disappointment. The disguise was taken off. The young man turned into a bald man who emitted the aura of hell and had a saw embedded in his head. His black leather clothes and the iron chains wrapped around his arms symbolized his identity as a monk of hell. Togu, isn't there still one more day before the entrance examination? Why are you back already? Due to the invasion of a large number of atavistic bodies from outside the parallel world, the church branch ended the trial for me early. The relevant personnel have already evacuated to the main parish. It was really boring. It was all relatively shallow torture without any depth. It wasn't interesting at all. Toga then took out a card with a whirlpool in the center that couldn't be copied. Han Dong's name was also engraved on it. He had obtained the status of an official teacher. With a satisfied expression, Han Dong put his hand on Togu's shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Since you weren't satisfied with the trial in the church, I'll let you have an absolutely satisfying experience later. Go back to the prison first. The things are also stored there. Try to touch them first. Okay." Chapter 1068. Han Dong showed everyone his identity card. I've obtained the status of an official instructor. You are also members of the Thorn Branch. I should be able to bring you along. Before we leave, I still want to know some information. That young man mentioned 2 names. They seem to be Hopper and Eugenus. To be mentioned by this arrogant madman, they should be the same as you, Miss Sally, right? The 5th origin, the revered Eugenus, and the 7th origin, the competitive Hopper. Although they are ranked behind me, their abilities are also very special. They are a rare species among the hybrid demons and are definitely outliers. In order to make Han Dong understand, Sally took a deep breath. Sally found some white paper in the room and used her tentacles to print the memories in her head onto the paper. Due to the anthropomorphic rules of the London game, apart from drawing the main body, Sally also included a detailed anthropomorphic form so that Han Dong could recognize it. Han Dong first picked up the completed piece of paper. It corresponded to the seventh origin, Hopper's main body and anthropomorphic form. At first glance, Han Dong actually didn't notice the anthropomorphic form. This was because the anthropomorphic form was too different from a main body. It only reached the toes. Due to the strict scaling, the anthropomorphic form looked very small. So big. What is his main body? Sally explained to Han Dong as she drew another more complicated image. Hopper belongs to the ancient giant category, but he's definitely an outlier. The ancient giant is an extremely low-level species among the hybrid demons. Some of the old kings even despise the inferior worship given by this species. No one would have thought that such a low-level species would have such a special outlier. The average ancient giant is about 4 to 10 meters tall. A few special species can reach 20 meters in height when they mature. However, Hopper's growth never stopped. When he signed up for the Origin competition, his main body had reached a terrifying height of 113 meters. Even when he signed up, the examiner couldn't verify his species. It was only when a prophet personally pointed out that he was an ancient giant that it was confirmed. After all, he was just too big, and he even grew 2 meters taller during the competition. He, who only had the atavistic body, was now chosen as the leader of the ancient good giants. Due to his outstanding performance in the Origin competition, he gained the favor of a certain old upper king related to Origin meat, and the entire ancient good tribe was thus protected. This guy's physical body is terrifyingly strong, and he's one of the few existences at the same level as me that can resist my trample. If a conflict breaks out between us and Hope, we must not confront him directly. If in a few years since the Origin competition, so he should have grown up again. Some kind of giant that can grow indefinitely? In other words, one's physical strength can be accumulated indefinitely. Han Dong suddenly thought of the blacksmith girl, Wen Li. Due to a certain bloodline, Wen Li's strength could also accumulate limitlessly. In fact, after becoming an official knight, her growth rate had significantly increased, allowing her to completely suppress Abel. At this moment, Sally's other painting had been completed. The drawing time was much longer than the drawing of ancient giant Hope. As its form was hard to describe, even Sally had spent a lot of effort during the drawing. The redoubtable Eugenist, the drawing paper, was actually a dynamic image, created by combining Sally's special body fluid with magic. This was because in Sally's eyes, only a dynamic image could express Eugenist's true form. This is an amorphous blob of protoplasm that fills the entire cave, emitting an extremely disgusting stench. Hundreds and thousands of eyes that reflect green light grow on each of his tentacles, and pus-like eyes are constantly forming and disintegrating on the surface. Just the original form in the drawing made Han Dong feel extremely uncomfortable. The corresponding humanoid form was a dirty middle-aged man in his 30s with dark green hair. Sally explained directly. Eugenist belongs to a type of high-level hybrid demon called Shoggoth, and he's a rare species among Shoggoth. Among the 10 origin demons, his tentacles and the corresponding isomerization are the most special. He's different from the ancient giant Hope and the mad demon Christopher. He's more inclined to use heretical power to attack the enemy and destroy the enemy from the inside. I have some dealings with him, and as long as it doesn't affect his fundamental interests, he shouldn't start a conflict with us. Although everyone's goal is to obtain unknown divinity, the general goal is to deal with the rebels in London. Our basic goal is the same, so it should be fine. Han Dong stared at the green-haired mantis demon in the picture and said in a low voice, "We're going to be playing the role of the rebels. Let's be prepared for anything that might happen. Miss Sally, if you're free, please write me a detailed ability list about Eugenist." Since their ultimate goal was the miracle in the Church of the Maelstrom, once they met in the end, a battle was inevitable. He stared at the 2 drawings in front of him. Meritus, who was behind Han Dong, was so scared that she wet the ground. Although everyone had the atavistic body, these few were enough to be called monsters in the hybrid demon circle. Han Dong fell into deep thought as well, thinking the atavistic body hybrid demons are known as the 10 origin demons. They can even be said to be future kings. Because of the London incident, 4 of them came directly. It's enough to show the importance above places on London. No wonder the final destination of the great expedition was chosen here. With the 3 strongest leaders, maybe we can really achieve an epic cooperation. I'll try to help. No matter what, I have to succeed. The current world situation is not optimistic. The Black Tower's tentative invasion of London was very effective. Maybe the next tentative invasion, or even the official invasion, will come in a short period of time. If only I had more time, that would be great. Sigh. If this happened 10 years later, I should have perfected the talent tree and succeeded in opening door, which is equivalent to the atavistic body among the elite knights and hybrid demons. I can also become an official employee of the Black Tower and get more internal information. I can even ask for help from the big brothers in the Fight Club. I can only bite the bullet and catch up. Han Dong took a deep breath and grabbed the Maelstrom identity card. Let's go. Most of the atavistic bodies who participated in the London game have just arrived here and are adapting to the environment of the parallel world. Let's go to the headquarters first. I'll do the communication. Meridas still turned into a toad bead and stayed in Han Dong's body like a mobile power source. When flying over London, they found many spatial rifts in the alleys. Atavistic bodies with different postures came from the outside world. It was as if the real London had relaxed the requirements and allowed foreign hybrid demons to enter. Or the defense line of London had been completely broken. After a while, standing on the bank of the River Thames, Big Ben's clock face was completely distorted. Chapter 1069. Just as Han Dong and the others were flying toward the headquarters of the Church of the Maelstrom, an irresistible gravity and flight restriction acted on their bodies. Although they could resist it, it was unnecessary. Is this an artificial no-fly zone? Or is it a restriction given by the title deed? It seems that the rebels planned the final defense area to be 2 blocks radiating outwards with Big Ben as the center. I thought all the instructors were holed up in the headquarters. I didn't expect there to be a no-fly zone. If we were stationed outside, the situation will be troublesome. Let's go down and reveal our identities. The edge of the no-fly zone happened to be facing the street. In the direction of Big Ben, a large number of disciples were stationed. From the strange posture of the instructors, it was obvious that they were affected by the participants' corpses. Their essence had more or less changed, and they could no longer be called hybrid demons. These pitiful dark dwellers had transformed into special life forms in the saint-level world. 1. Some of the instructors had a part of their bodies that was severely spiraled. They were the same as Han Dong. They sacrificed a large number of their kind through the initiation ceremony and obtained a vortex power from the saint-level world. Some of them could use the vortex attribute to grant physical attacks. They could easily twist hard objects such as metal and rocks. They could also twist the body into a fried dough twist and kill the opponent directly. Some could use the vortex to dissolve all forms of enemy attacks and even achieve energy absorption. Senior instructors who evolved from atavistic body could even trigger the vortex domain and directly induce changes in the area. 2. In addition to the headquarters staff, there were also instructors belonging to the Silent Companions and the Heavy Sword Brotherhood. It was similar to the thorn that Han Dong came into contact with. Silence and Heavy Sword were also attributes from the saint-level world and had a miraculous effect on hybrid demons. Silence was similar to the literal meaning. The silent instructors guarding the street area had a common characteristic: the important organ for eating, speaking, and breathing. Mouth was completely erased. All of them covered their bodies in a hood, similar to the silent warlock. Through the observation of Han Dong's magic eye, the no-fly effect was caused by them. When approaching this group of people, it would cause the magic circuit to be blocked, and the ability to control magic would be significantly reduced. If one was targeted by the silent ones alone, Even magic would be ineffective. The easiest way to deal with this group of people was to use physical attacks. Targeted at hybrid demons. When the silent instructor faced the hybrid demons, not only could they suppress magic, but they could also suppress the hybrid demons and weaken their physical bodies. The Heavy Sword Brotherhood was also a very peculiar church. When Han Dong first heard the name, he thought that it was a group of strong men carrying heavy long swords on their backs, but in reality, that was not the case. The Epei sword instructors all revealed their upper bodies, while the females were a circle around their chests. Their lower bodies were all dark color instructors' skirts. The instructors' physiques were relatively strong, and they even felt that there was extra meat in their bodies. They were not wearing heavy metal swords. Instead, there was a sword-shaped sacred scar on their exposed upper bodies. When Han Dong slowly descended from the sky, he coincidentally saw the scene of the heavy sword being summoned. An Epei instructor reached out and touched this sacred scar on his shoulder blade. The meat was separated. Strips of fleshy flesh grew out of the scars like cables. In the air, a heavy sword made of flesh and blood was connected to the sacred scar through the fleshy flesh like cables, just floating in the air. This type of heavy sword had self-awareness. It could automatically attack the target when the user was fighting. If the user controlled the heavy sword, its speed and damage would be doubled. The sacred runes flowing inside the heavy sword could greatly suppress the regeneration ability of the hybrid demons and could also shatter the magic cast by the hybrid demons. In addition, the heavy sword could also undergo a second modification. The reason why the instructor in front of him had summoned the heavy sword was so that he could process it on the spot. He had nailed pieces of paper similar to the pages of the Bible onto the surface of the heavy sword. This would make it more effective against the hybrid demons. As for the members of the Thorn Church, only a small portion of them were still alive. Most of them had died in last night's incident, and the bodies of the most important participants had been stolen. The Thorn Church could be said to be dead in name only. The demonic eye scanned the scene in front of him as fast as it could. It gathered in Han Dong's head and quickly organized the information. As expected, no matter which participant carries an attribute, it can be used against the hybrid demons. Although there are more than 100 atavistic bodies here, including 4 monsters. However, due to the suppression of attributes and the presence of a mythical body, it won't be easy to attack the headquarters. When Han Dong landed, he quickly took out the Vortex identity card in his pocket and explained, "I just became an official. I'm an official instructor who just passed a trial. These two are members of the Thistles and Thorns Union that I met on the way. They are quite strong and should be able to help." The person in charge of verifying the identity was a man whose head was completely caved in. The spiral almost covered his entire face, so much so that there was no facial structure. After verifying the identity card and checking the vortex mark on Han Dong's torso, the identity verification passed. The headquarters is in a sealed state. Other than those specially permitted by Father Lessos, other instructors are not allowed to enter. I will arrange for you to be in the streets where there is a shortage of manpower and be prepared to fight against the hybrid demons. If you perform well in battle, you might be summoned by the priest. The situation Han Dong was worried about still happened. If they were arranged to be stationed in the streets, the infiltration plan would be meaningless. Han Dong gritted his teeth and offered a more risky condition. "I have important information that involves an outsider. Last night, I happened to witness the entire process of the fatal attack on the Thorn Church. Almost all the Thorn Church instructors died in the hands of an outsider. It is a special existence that can control the Hound of Yandelis. This guy might be a threat to the headquarters' safety. I want to—" Who knew? The instructor with the spiral face that was completely caved in was not shocked by the name of the Hound of Yandelis. He said calmly, "Thank you very much for your information. However, since it happened in London, there is no need to report it. Everything is under the priest's control. This time, there are a few atavistic bodies known as origin substance hidden among the outsiders. Because of this, the priest asked us to gather in the headquarters area. Follow me." We need to fill in some of the personnel at the South Street entrance. I hope you can perform well. Since you're a new official faculty member, I'll tell you something in secret. You must perform well and try to survive the first wave of attack and defense. As long as you can survive, you will win a rare opportunity. Han Dong faintly smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Chapter 1070. Han Dong and the other two were assigned to the south side of the street and were responsible for the defense of the area. Now, the foreign fiends had yet to attack. Han Dong, who thought that he could use his official teacher identity, was unable to enter the church headquarters because of the blockade order issued by Father Lessos. The current situation required Han Dong to make a decision. Sally, can you come alone for a moment? Following Han Dong's call, Sally was called into an empty building by the street. Campbell stayed outside in case anything happened outside while the two were talking. Due to Han Dong's good performance and the current situation, Campbell knew that Han Dong was looking for Sally to talk about some business, so he didn't ask much. In a single bedroom in an empty building, his long legs blocked Han Dong's side, and his strong arms pushed Han Dong into a corner. One of your advantages is already gone. Why did you call me out alone at such a critical moment? What's the matter? Miss Sally, don't be so strong. I just want to verify something. Since I didn't successfully enter the church headquarters, I'm considering whether to change factions. Verify what? You said before that the madman last night had the strength to fight a mythical being. Can he really do it? That madman can indeed compete with a mythical being. With his personality, he once faced a mythical being head-on. Not to mention now that he has a hound. Compared to the original game a few years ago, his strength must have increased by another level. This madman's realm is infinitely close to mythical, and he has even found the corresponding mythical path. This time, he came to participate in the London game. As he said, he is not interested in the unknown divinity. He just came to eliminate the rebels, and simply enjoyed the process of this game. Han Dong nodded and continued. A celebrity like him, and even you, Miss Sally, as well as Hope and Eugenius, should be very well known in the fiend circle, right? Since this madman can compete with a mythical being, you shouldn't be much worse. Father Lessos, who is in charge of the internal and external affairs of the Church of the Maelstrom, must also recognize you. However, judging from the receptionist's words just now, it seemed that the receptionist was right. The mad devil's information and movements seemed to be under his control. Not only was he not nervous about the mad devil riding the Hound of Yandalus, he seemed to be happy to see him and the other original bodies. I don't even feel it. This Father Lessoth was happy to see more outsiders come here. Previously, when we flew over, a large number of atavistic bodies invaded the parallel world. I suspect that this priest deliberately relaxed the entry requirements. In addition, the receptionist's last words were that if he survived, he would be able to obtain an opportunity. Can Miss Sally make any guesses? Just say it. From the looks of it, you should have an inference. I'm just guessing. I reckon that the priest is using this opportunity to select people, choosing people. Although we haven't seen the miracle of the whirlpool yet, it's still a miracle. But I also know that no one can control the unknown divinity that miracles correspond to. I reckon that Father Lessos let many teachers with good qualifications try to touch miracles, but they all failed and even paid a terrible price, since it is difficult to find a suitable successor in the homeland. Now, under the watchful eyes of the old kings, a large number of atavistic bodies are participating in the game. The priest can use this confrontation with the parallel world to select people. Select the person who is most compatible with the unknown divinity. The attack and defense battle that is about to take place in the neighborhood around the headquarters is likely to be the first part of the selection. A large number of people with insufficient strength will be screened out in this process. When the others heard Han Dong's detailed explanation and found it reasonable, they might agree. But Sally did not. To be able to climb to her current position, careful thinking was essential. There is a problem with your statement. 1. What if the final selection is one of our people? 2. Moreover, even if one of their people is selected, what use is it to Father Lessos? He is already a mythical body. No matter how excellent such divinity is, it has nothing to do with him. Since he knows that many old kings are watching the city of London, why would he dare to do such a rebellious thing? I don't think I need to say more about what will happen to him in the end, right? Han Dong touched the tip of his nose with his finger. He had also thought about Sally's question and had a corresponding answer. Actually, the above two questions can be answered in combination. I suspect that Father Lessos has reached some kind of deep agreement with fate and even the corresponding participant who caused the London incident, the World of Saint. One of the conditions in the agreement should be for him to trigger the descent of a miracle and let a certain hybrid demon inherit it. The divinity inheritance here is naturally not limited to the dark inhabitants or other hybrid demons. As long as it can be inherited, there should be no problem. Once such an agreement is reached, the fate system may help him cut off the connection with this world and go to the World of Saint with a new identity to get the life he wants. At that time, even the old kings can't do anything to him. If I'm not wrong, the headquarters of the Church of the Maelstrom, Big Ben, should also be the location of the Door of Destiny. London, right? Cut off the connection with the world and go to another world. Sally was shocked. Han Dong's words made sense. In this way, there was no need to worry about anything. From information I've gathered so far, the World of Saint should be very suitable for people like Father Lessos. Moreover, I'm sure that the other side has given a very high condition, one that he can't refuse. If it's really like what you said, this matter will definitely anger the old kings. So what if it angers them? The other side clearly wants to cause trouble. Of course, this is just my guess. Since the relevant guesses have been made clear, I would like to change the plan at the last minute. I hope Miss Sally can cooperate with me. What do you want to do now? Barging into the church's headquarters? No, I haven't lived long enough. Since we can't sneak into the headquarters now, your identity as Thorn won't be taken seriously. You and Campbell should return to the outsider camp. I'll continue to stay here. Since we have roughly guessed the priest's thoughts and the selection plan, it should be forcefully stopped when the attack and defense battle reaches a certain level. We are in the opposing camp. Secretly exchanging information can also avoid danger to the greatest extent. I'll use my human identity to kill some irrelevant hybrid demons, which is also a legitimate defense. I only need Miss Sally to provide some information on my end to let me avoid those origin essence. Are you sure you want to do this? If you follow me, the safety factor will be much higher. I'm sure, and doing this is the only way to help Miss Sally win the bet. At this point, Sally's black gem-like eyes stared straight at Han Dong. The two of them stared at each other for a whole minute. Just do as you say, don't die. Chapter 1071. The plan was settled. Due to the need for timely communication during the attack and defense, Sally had to provide Han Dong with information on the movements of the foreign hybrid demons to prevent Han Dong from running into the origin. Han Dong also needed to report to Sally to ensure that she would not fall into the traps set by the church or encounter some powerful priests, so that she could conserve as much energy as possible. Considering that the members of the Passage of Silence had the ability to block communication, normal consciousness communication might be blocked. Therefore, the two of them had to establish a higher-level consciousness channel to ensure smooth communication. Squeak! A gray tentacle with spots grew out of Han Dong's palm. A dark purple tentacle grew out of Sally's palm as well. They intertwined and formed a deeper layer of tentacles. The external characteristics of the hybrid demons were as important as their limbs to humans. They belonged to different tribes and belonged to different kings. Their tentacles were different in their softness, thickness, color, and translucency, as well as their corresponding attributes. For example, Nicole's deep-sea eight-clawed tentacles could not only bind and corrode, but they could also create arrays through suction cups. Together with the main body, they could achieve the effect of multiple casting. Han Dong opened the Void Laboratory and obtained void tentacles that could perform contact spatial migration. Han Dong's own tentacles, which are the tentacles of the Faceless One's head, had the effect of camouflage. They could even camouflage the tentacles of other hybrid demons and display the corresponding characteristics. When the hybrid demons reach maturity, their tentacles would undergo isomorphism according to their own attributes, further deepening the specificity and functions of the tentacles. Often, a single tentacle could identify most of the information of the corresponding hybrid demon. Currently, the two of them intertwined their tentacles and established an internal network, and at the same time, they obtained information related to each other's tentacles. Han Dong and Sally both widened their eyes at the same time. They were clearly shocked by the information of each other's tentacles. Han Dong sensed that the black goat's tentacles were stronger than expected. Not only were their strength, toughness, and numbers above his, but the purple tentacles also had a direct bloodline from the old king that allowed Sally to use some abilities from the depths of the Black Forest. Sally's shock was even greater than his. She had always thought that Han Dong was a direct descendant that Yellow Robe had cultivated in the human city. However, the information he read from the tentacle pointed to another old king, another person who was also close to humans but had a very special status. Gray matter. No wonder you can control so many abilities, disguise yourself, and even learn the vortex ability that doesn't belong to our world. Who are you? Let's wait until the London game is over. Yes. Sally turned around and met up with Campbell, who was waiting downstairs. Using Campbell's high-speed flight and the Black Goat's mental bewitchment, she quickly taught them the defensive line. On Han Dong's side, Meritus appeared in the bathroom of the cubicle and said with an unhappy face, "How is it? How did the Black Mountain Goat taste? Did the interweaving of the tentacles just now let you see a different scenery? The blood flowing in the Black Goat's body should be able to lead your thoughts to the Black Forest filled with love. I thought you guys would start mating right here. It's just a mental connection. Who would believe you? However, in a certain way, you're quite powerful. You can actually establish such a relationship with the fourth prime substance. If this Black Goat goes crazy, the two of us together may be killed." Haha, indeed. Han Dong did see a terrifying scene when the tentacles intertwined just now. However, the stronger Sally was, the greater Han Dong's chances of winning. About 3 hours later, suddenly, a strong tremor came from not far away. At the same time, there was a sound similar to a missile explosion. It immediately attracted Han Dong's attention. At the same time, he also received a voice transmission from Miss Sally. Hope has gathered a large number of atavistic bodies to act together. A large-scale invasion will be launched from the north side of Parliament Square. The offensive and defensive battle has already begun. Be careful. If there are any movements of the prime substance, I'll inform you immediately. Okay. The scene shifted to the explosion site. He was a young man who looked like an ape man and had a thick beard. Due to his punch from the sky, he directly blasted a 100-meter-wide crater in the street entrance area. The building collapsed, and all the defensive facilities at the street entrance were destroyed. Taking advantage of such an opportunity, the atavistic bodies that Hope had gathered in advance charged into the street area, and the offensive and defensive battle officially began. However, this primitive young man was not in a hurry to move. He seemed to be waiting for something. After a while, a huge black shadow descended from the sky. Boom! The ground trembled again. A terrifying black beast suddenly landed in front of the young man. It seemed to be his exclusive mount. It was similar to a black beast covered in black soft hair. It could maintain a standing position with a perfect spinal system. Its arm was divided into two at the elbow joint, a rear arm connected to two forearms, showing a deformed forearmed state. The downward arm was used to assist in standing and moving, while the forward arm was used to tear the enemy apart. It looked like a giant and also like a giant beast. It had no head structure. Instead, it had a huge mouth with fangs on its neck. That's right, this was a beast, ancient giant. Its overall height was 30 meters, more than 3 times the maximum. The reason was that, as an experimental subject, it had eaten some ancient meat and successfully survived. The meat gave it a bigger physique and strength, but it also erased its rational thinking. A giant sarcoma grew on its back, which was proof that it had eaten the primitive meat. The loss of its rationality completely turned it into a ferocious and brutal beast that relied on primitive desires to act. Just as the ancient Gu clan was about to execute it, Hope, who had returned from a trip, immediately tamed this beast giant. It became Hope's favorite pet and also his war behemoth. Guga, let's go. The primitive young man was the anthropomorphic Hope, the 7th origin. He easily jumped and landed on the giant beast's shoulder. Several hairy tentacles grew from the back of Hope's neck and connected to the sarcoma on Guga's back. Using the primitive meat in its body, Hope strengthened the mount and freely controlled it. A heavy-sword monk who tried to resist was directly stomped into minced meat. At the same time, a strange green plague began to spread in the church's defense area. The teachers would often smell a foul smell before the infection. It was like stinky boots that had been soaked in the sewers for more than 10 years and stuffed with pounds of fermented herring. The silent teachers could suppress the plague to a certain extent. But as the war went on, the plague that could not be eradicated quietly spread. When a wound appeared on the body of an individual, the plague would quickly invade and take effect. A large number of green eyeballs would grow from the wound, and within an hour, the eyeballs would cover the whole body. At the moment when the eyeballs covered the whole body and died, the deceased could see a dirty man in his 30s with dark green hair waving at him through the eyeballs all over his body. Chapter 1072. Giant Crater. It was Hopper who had descended from the sky and landed a punch on the crossroad, forming a crater that resembled a small meteorite impact. Another distinguished guest was here. The Yandelo's hound tore through space with its unique teeth and landed in the deepest part of the crater. The young man jumped down from the hound's back and carefully inspected the ground. He seemed to have smelled a familiar scent of meat. The young man extended his right hand and placed his palm on the ground. For a moment, the young man's palm turned into an abyss filled with fangs. There were low howls coming from inside and a strong suction force. Some substances hidden in the cracks were slowly sucked out and gathered into a ball of fleshy cells in the young man's palm. He could analyze Hopper's recent situation through this ball of cells. As expected of Hopper, the growth of his body is increasing instead of decreasing. He's much stronger than he was in the origin competition last time. If we were to fight head-on, I might be at a disadvantage. Although Hopper was the 7th origin seed and ranked lower, he was still an inferior ancient giant. The crazy young man admired Hopper. What he valued was not bloodline, identity, status, or the so-called chains of contempt. In his eyes, there was only one scale to measure, and that was strength. Hopper's strength was invincible among those of the same level. He was even much stronger than the young man. That was enough. Since you're here, I'll take a different path. The crazy young man took the initiative to give way and went to the church's main area through another street. Wherever he went, there were only corpses on the ground. There were no unnecessary screams of pain. Before the silencer's ability to silence the young man, their heads were already captured by the Yandelo's hound's space plunder, torn apart, and held in its mouth. Before the Ape instructor could swing his sword, the scars on his back connected to his entire back muscles were torn apart by the hound. In a short time, a large number of deaths of instructors immediately attracted the attention of the bishop. A high-ranking instructor named Minda Gonzalo immediately moved after receiving the request for help. Minda Gonzalo, atavistic body. He was once a dark instructor in London and held a medium-sized title deed in his hand. It corresponded to a town in the eastern mountains of England. His type was dark inhabitant, flesh modified, which was completely different from candlestick. From the name, one could tell that these dark dwellers specialized in the physical body. At the same time, They also incorporated the hybrid demon technology that supported London. The muscles that were overflowing with a metallic luster were actually stronger than alloys, and it would not affect the individual's growth. His back was filled with soft catheters. There was a high concentration of black blood flowing inside, and there were obvious traces of technological modification on the outside to support such a body. However, Minda was not satisfied. Because of his thirst for power, when he came into contact with the whirlpool ability from another world, he did not hesitate to bear the name of Rebel, and took the initiative to learn this power from the Saint World. He was now a high-ranking instructor of the Maelstrom Church. Flesh modification and vortex had a high compatibility, and it was enough to describe the changes that happened to Minda's body. This change also made him a miracle candidate. The conduits on the back were closely arranged in a spiral pattern. Minda's elbows, wrists, knees, ankles, and neck were all in a spiral state. Compared to his once robust body, he was now a lot thinner. Why are there so many dead people on Parliament Street? Turn your ankle. Minda moved at high speed. A large number of spiral footprints appeared on the wall. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing on the top floor of a building that was dozens of meters tall, looking at the situation on the street. Although he was confident that he could easily deal with the same level of mantis demons with the combination of his body and the whirlpool, it was better to be safe at such a critical time. As a high-ranking instructor, he knew the church's goal to a certain extent. The attack and defense battle that happened on the street was just a selection process, and the main goal was to survive. If there was something particularly difficult to deal with, it was better to avoid it. That was with the enhancement of vision in the darkness. Minda saw a young man riding a hound. Not to mention the visual impact of the hound, the aura released by the young man made him sweat profusely. This is the first origin substance with the mad bloodline actually controlled the Hound of Yandalis. In front of such a monster, he had no confidence at all. Minda decisively turned around and tried to retreat. Suddenly, a strong sense of space came from behind him. This kind of forceful tearing of space could ignore the seal of the Silent One, the stench of a wild beast. Sizzle, corrosive saliva dripped onto the ground behind him. At the same time, there was an oppressive feeling of being watched by the abyss. The immense pressure made Minda's body tense up, and the black liquid in the spiral tube on his back flowed faster. All along the way, there were only low-level rebels. How boring. I finally found a rebel at the atavistic stage. Also, the mantis demon aura on your body has almost disappeared, and you seem to have lost the essence of the mantis demon. Let me see the power you obtained from the other world, the power that can suppress the mantis demons. Don't disappoint me. When the crazy voice ended, the hound's sharp claws tore through the air. Won't. The structure of the claws was similar to teeth, and they could tear through space. It was to the point that the claws could skip the process of waving and directly attack the target's body. Drip, drip, drip. A spiral footprint was left on the ground, and Minda was already standing at a corner of the rooftop. A small amount of black blood dripped down his arm, and the wound only reached the skin, not the muscles. It was only a small wound. However, the front claws of the Yandalos hound were severely spiraled. The claws, fur, flesh, and bones were all twisted into a ball, unable to function normally. A sound similar to a demon's howl came from the hound's mouth as it tried to slowly recover. This result shocked the young man. He jumped down from the hound's back and said with a face full of shock, "Is this the power of the other world? It's beyond my imagination. May I ask your name?" "My name is Christopher J. Green. Nice to meet you." "Minda Gonzalo." Minda stared at the crazy person in front of him, while also looking at the hound behind him. The hound had already cut off its twisted front limb, and a new limb had grown out. It was completely enraged by the injury. The hound's head completely bloomed, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth. A rotten stench came from the depths of its throat, and it pounced at Minda. Who would have thought that something unexpected would happen? The crazy youth's expression suddenly changed. He directly threw out a roundhouse kick, hitting the hound's head. Crack! The hound's skull cracked. The hound was stunned by this kick, and it fell heavily onto the street from a building dozens of meters high. Boom! The hound crashed into the building on the opposite side of the street. So much so that the storefront on the first floor was completely smashed, sinking into the ground and unable to move. Useless dog. Without my orders, you actually dared to act on your own. What a primitive life form with low intelligence. At this point, the youth's expression returned to normal. He stared at the senior instructor in front of him, Minda, who had piqued his interest with his eyes that were as deep as caves. Mr. Minda, you're the first existence that has piqued my interest since I came to London. Come on, use the power you obtained from the other world and attack me directly. I beg you, you must hurt me. I haven't experienced the pleasure of pain in a long time. Chapter 1073. At the top of a tall building. The airflow at the top of the building was spiraling, stirring up the air. The wind blew the young man's messy hair, revealing a face without a mouth, a straight nose, and eyes that were like deep holes. Come, Mr. Minda, show me your choice. Show me how powerful you are by abandoning your essence as a hybrid demon. Minda, who had originally wanted to retreat, heard the challenge invitation from the strong. Perhaps he was affected by the crazy temperament. His thoughts of avoiding the battle were completely erased, and he accepted the challenge. Okay, Minda's personification was more like a black human with metal muscles. As described before, the whirlpool, he learned, was mainly in his joints. It could give him an explosive speed, and through compression and twisting between his joints, it could accumulate a huge amount of energy. Simply speaking, it was similar to a spring, but its efficiency was much higher. Combined with the hybrid demon technology in Minda's body, his speed could be ranked in the top 3 in London. Most importantly, this kind of whirlpool from the Saint World had a miraculous effect on hybrid demons. The whirlpool that Minda fused with leaned towards physical attacks, and when he attacked, it would have a whirlpool effect. When physical attacks hit the target, it will cause distortion damage. Normal parts will cause 0, 5 times extra damage, and fatal parts will cause 1, 5 to 2, 5 times extra damage. At the same time, it will cause the regeneration effect of the hit part to be greatly weakened, and the target will lose the corresponding function for a period of time. When dealing with hybrid demons, the whirlpool effect will be doubled. When hitting a fatal part, the hybrid demon core, there's a certain chance of instant death. He stared at the youth in front of him, who had his arms open and was full of flaws. Since the battle had already begun, this was a great opportunity. The tube connected to Minda's back was crazily transporting the black liquid, maximizing the energy supply. Explode. The energy accumulated in his ankle was instantly released in an explosive manner. Crack, the rocks under his feet all exploded. Minda's speed instantly exceeded the speed of sound. The youth didn't react at all, and he still maintained his posture with his arms open. Got it. Minda was also an atavistic body with rich combat experience. The moment he punched out, the whirlpool energy in his wrist joint exploded. A perfect punch landed on the youth's chest. Hiss! A tornado formed behind the young man's back, which was caused by this punch. The part of the body that was hit by the punch began to twist crazily. His skin, flesh, bones, and organs were all twisted into a mess, and the twisting effect was still continuing. When it reached its limit, Mad Demon's body instantly exploded. His physical body was completely destroyed, not even leaving behind a single bone. It's over? This, if it was any other time, Minda would have given such a perfect punch to a defenseless target. Minda definitely wouldn't have any doubts and would have believed that the target was dead. However, the situation before him was different. His current opponent was the hybrid demon with the highest evaluation among the atavistic hybrid demons. He had been acknowledged by many of the old kings, and the blood of madness flowed through his veins. He shouldn't have died just like that. Even though his physical body had been destroyed and he couldn't smell anything, Minda still felt that something wasn't right, until a voice rang out. What a strong destructive power! The power that the other world gave him was indeed not bad, and it was especially effective against the hybrid demons. If that punch had landed on any other Mantis demon, it might have been fatal. Even if they didn't die, they would have been heavily injured. I finally understand you. The blood flowing in your body is just ordinary dark blood. Relying on the support of the hybrid demon technology and persevering training, you barely achieved the atavism body. It's almost impossible for you to become a god in this life. With this kind of power system in front of you, it was reasonable for you to grab the opportunity. The feeling of your body being torn apart was very comfortable. Thank you. The source of the voice wasn't in a hidden area. Instead, it came from Minda's ear hole. The voice of the mad demon came from within his body. At some point, Minda's right ear had become a structure similar to an abyss cave. A dizzying, ringing sound reverberated in Minda's head, causing him to lose the ability to move and kneel on one knee. During the ringing, Minda's right ear hole continued to expand until it was the size of a fist. Upon closer inspection, there were layers of wriggling walls within the ear hole, and something was slowly crawling out, schwa. A slender arm stretched out of the ear hole, bringing with it a pile of sticky body fluid. The black nails made one's scalp tingle. Following that, the head, body, and other parts of the body slowly squeezed out of the ear hole. The ear hole directly expanded to cover the right side of the head. However, no matter how much the ear hole expanded, the brain structure couldn't be seen. It was just the structure of a bottomless cave. The thing that crawled out of the ear hole was the mad demon youth who had just been killed. At this moment, the ear hole slowly recovered and returned to normal. The ringing in his ears disappeared, and he could move again. Minda, who was kneeling on one knee, felt a bit dizzy. He stared at the youth in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. What is this ability? Although Minda didn't believe that the number one origin essence had died just like that, the way the youth reappeared gave him a fright. Suddenly, Minda revealed an extremely ferocious expression as he put on a metal skull mask. For a moment, the flesh all over his body began to twist. His physical fitness increased by another 50%. His arms quickly swung out continuously, hitting different parts of the youth from the outside. It looked like dozens of spinning fangs had combined together and were about to devour the youth. Can you be even stronger? Not bad. It's a pity that the nature of your attacks hasn't changed. It's still lacking. Before he could finish speaking, the youth was shattered once again. Not long after, another voice rang out from Minda's body. This time, it came from his navel. The previous words continued. Minda, it's still lacking by a bit. If your attacks could be a bit stronger on the soul level, perhaps you would be able to make me feel danger. After speaking, Minda's navel turned into an abyss. The youth crawled out of it in the same manner, completely unharmed. At this moment, Minda was holding his stomach as he vomited. His mind had completely collapsed during this process. He had abandoned the power of the vortex that he had been searching for, a power that was specifically used to deal with hybrid demons. However, it had no effect on the hybrid demon in front of him. The result of this battle had dealt a devastating blow to his heart. His eyes were gradually covered by panic, and he completely lost his will to fight. His body trembled as he spoke. You're not a hybrid demon. You're a monster. At this moment, the kind-looking youth's expression suddenly froze. He revealed an extremely disappointed expression. Why? Why did it become like this? I thought that you had the courage to abandon your hybrid demon nature and become an enemy of the entire world in the pursuit of power. That would make you different from the others, but you're still the same as them. Why? Why are you still so inferior? Why are you still so disappointing? Suddenly, a power that came from the bottom of the abyss descended. In the blink of an eye, when Minda came back to his senses, he was already falling. His physical body had already died, and his soul was falling into the abyss of madness. It had become a part of madness and would never be reincarnated. Chapter 1074. On the top floor of a tall building. The vortex was finally swallowed by the abyss, leaving the young man standing alone on the top of the building. His eyes flashed with loneliness. Minda seemed to have been killed instantly. In fact, when he attacked the mad demon, it was equivalent to standing on the edge of madness and constantly moving towards the abyss. Faith, or virtue, could prevent him from being attacked by madness in the abyss, but once the individual lost their will to fight and their willpower was exhausted, they would be devoured by the abyss. They would be turned into food for madness, unable to realize the process of their own death. When Minda couldn't understand the young man's ability and began to doubt himself and fear, he had already failed. Although disappointing, his combat power is really good. At least with his identity as a dark resident, he definitely can't exert such strength, and it's impossible for him to crush me twice. The vortex from another world is indeed highly lethal to the hybrid demons. If this guy can cross the door and touch a certain level of the mythical realm, I might really be in danger. No wonder that old man forced me to participate in the London game. I have to say, it's still a bit interesting. Eugenius, have you seen enough? You're still as annoying as before. You like to hide in the corner and observe. Do you think you can have an advantage like this? It's just a useless move of the week. After saying that, Mad Demon Christopher J. Green reached out and squeezed. An eyeball hidden in the subspace instantly exploded. At the same time, in a dark alley hundreds of meters away, the concentration of the green plague had reached its maximum. The sloppy green young man suddenly covered his eyes. Drip, 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 a large amount of green liquid seeped out from his eye sockets. The structure of his eyes had been damaged to a certain extent. At the same time, he showed a hateful expression. His hair turned into gray tentacles full of green eyeballs and floated in the air. At this moment, a person walked in from the entrance of the alley. The black goat's hooves were very conspicuous, and the footsteps were easy to distinguish. Eugenius, long time no see. Did you provoke that lunatic? Eugenius, whose eyes were injured, was in a very bad mood. He directly threw more than a dozen eyeball tentacles at the entrance of the alley. Seeing that these strange tentacles were about to touch the black goat, reason took over, and the tentacles suddenly stopped. A hoarse voice sounded, "Sally, do you still remember our agreement in the source game? Also, I don't think you want that lunatic to win this game. Share the information you just saw with me. I will also think of a way to stop that madman." After saying that, the green tentacle peeled off an eyeball that was emitting a green fluorescent luster and landed in Sally's palm. "Thank you. In return, please tell me some of your deductions." When Sally told him about Han Dong's reasoning, the man was surprised at first, but then he nodded. "Eugenius, there's one more thing. In the rebel church, there's an informant of mine. A portion of his body's attributes are inclined towards humans. Remember not to injure him." Eugenius did not respond. His body slowly turned into a puddle of rotten mucus and crawled into the sewer. His aura disappeared, too. Sally immediately communicated with Han Dong the moment she received the information. Intertwining tentacles, because the two of them had established a consciousness channel in advance. As long as one of them requested to connect, the consciousness channel would open. Their consciousnesses seemed to be standing at the border between the Black Forest and the Gray Ridge Plateau as they communicated. "Miss Sally, what's the matter?" Han Dong was hiding in an empty building and secretly observing. He planned to be a pure bystander and muddle through this attack in defense of London. "I'll tell you about the movements of a few primordials and show you something while I'm at it." Hope is riding a giant with an enormous physique. He's carrying a large number of atavistic bodies to fight head-on with the church. It's easy to recognize him. As long as you don't provoke him, you won't encounter him. I've just found Eugenius' true form. Using my previous relationship with him, I've roughly explained the situation to him in your information. He won't target you specifically. The green plague spreading through the streets is Eugenius' ability. You just have to avoid it appropriately. As for Green, this battle with a high-ranking teacher from the Church of the Maelstrom just now, it happened to be recorded by Eugenius. It's better if you take a look at it yourself. Han Dong reached out and took the green eyeball. "How do I use this?" Just connect it to your optic nerve. Oh, it was the first time Han Dong had seen such a technology that could store images seen by the naked eye in the eyeball. A gray tentacle separated from the back of the head and connected to the eyeball. One by one, the ultra-high-definition images were immediately read by Han Dong. He could even zoom, pause, and play them in slow motion under the control of his consciousness. At first, Han Dong showed an extremely surprised expression. He found it difficult to understand the exaggerated ability displayed by the mad demon, but he slowly saw the problem. When the high-ranking teacher, named Minta, fought with the mad demon, he must have been affected by an invisible field. Moreover, because of the physical contact, his body became a carrier. As a result, the mad demon was able to use him as a carrier and regenerate from his body without limit. What kind of crazy ability is this? Sally stared at Han Dong in surprise. When the primordials saw the mad demon's ability for the first time, it was also difficult for them to understand. It was only after many battles and analysis that they barely managed to figure it out. Although Han Dong's explanation wasn't completely correct, it also pointed out the key point. It is indeed related to the field. This involves the mad demon's bloodline. The mad demon released can not only gradually penetrate the opponent's mind, but also leave a mark of madness on the opponent. During the battle, it will constantly erode the target. When the opponent's willpower fades to a certain extent, it will immediately be crazily devoured. This is only one of his abilities. As you can see, this guy can send the Hound of Yandalis flying with just one kick. It's not just strength, it also involves some kind of technology and the quality of the tentacles. The purpose of Sally deliberately bringing this video was to let Han Dong clearly understand the horror of the mad demon. In Sally's opinion, Han Dong's performance was too confident, and this confidence came largely from his lack of understanding of the mad demon. But just as Han Dong carefully watched the video and listened to Sally's explanation, there was no decrease in fighting spirit, nor was there any fear or panic. Instead, ha-ha, crazy laughter constantly overflowed from Han Dong's body, revealing an extra happy expression, as if he had found a confidant. Christopher J. Green, is it? I must get in touch with this person. I didn't expect such a guy to exist. He's actually this strong. With such a guy as an opponent, it's indeed difficult for Miss Sally to win the bet, but it's not completely hopeless. And with this guy's existence, we may be able to win a world-level victory. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.